going down. You have to fail multiple times to find the right way. But once you find that right flow, and you're gonna be more successful.
Resilience is kind of understanding that like bad things will happen and that like you can turn those into opportunities to grow and become a stronger person.
When I was young, I was one of the only women in climbing. I was the kid at the gym climbing with all the older dudes. I think for me it was sort of like a proving ground.
I've had those struggles too, that people have been upset that there's been a black person in their gym. And I'm resilient because I don't let it stop me.
Adversity teaches you to fail properly. And if you're not willing to accept failure, then you're never going to learn to grow.
Bro, whatever you can throw at me, like, you're not going to take me away from what I want to do. You can't stop me.
Whether you're alpine climbing or cragging after work, Gnarly Nutrition is here to help you push your possible.
Travel doesn't have to be this super exotic international thing. It can really be out of your own backyard. The high desert is so three-dimensional and it's so big that there is no way you could ever see everything here. The orange and brown and yellow is just so endless. Whether it's something I've done before or something brand new, there's so much to explore just right here.
So yeah, we've been testing out the new catch and hold system from the TruBlue IQ Plus. And with the IQ Plus, you know, you're just able to stop there, rest, shake out, try to figure out the moves, and yeah, really excited to have this new device in our gym. It's going to just really help us to continue growing the sport.
Since 1966, we have viewed walls not as obstacles, but as opportunities. From the big walls of Yosemite to the high peaks of the Himalaya, we were searching for a personal kind of freedom. In this pursuit, we found a community, strengthened by different stories, experiences, and perspectives. This community has shown us that the only way forward is together.
welcome to the USA Climbing 2023 National Team Trials presented by YETI. We are in Austin, Texas, where the best climbers in the country have gathered to compete for a spot on the Boulder and Lead National Team. USA Climbing is excited to be at the beautiful brand new Mesa Rim Climbing Center in Austin. If you're in the area, y'all should come check it out. I'm Megan Martin here with three-time Canadian national champion Allison Best. Allison, thank you for joining me here today.
So excited to be here. It's another great day. We had the women yesterday, and I think the men are just eager to get going. It's a big, important event.
Very important event, and we are at the men's semifinal round, starting with the boulder round, and there is so much at stake here today. These men are going to try to get on that national team. There are 5 spots available to them, and we'll figure out who those people are tonight. But getting to it, like I said, 5 men will make that national team. We have the combined scoring format. They're starting in the boulder discipline, then they'll move to the lead discipline, and those scores will be added together. 3 climbers that are not here right now are the pre-selected athletes, Natalia Grossman, Brooke Rabideau, and Colin Duffy. They will be on, or they're already on the team due to their results from the World Cup, so the 5 will be joining them. And the national team members will get to compete in the World Cups this season and hopefully set themselves up to possibly make the team in Paris 2024.
And we do have a new combined format leading up to the Olympics in Paris. Top 20 men from the qualifying round will be seen here today. Same as usual, 4 problems each, 5 minutes on the clock, but there is a new scoring on every individual boulder. There's a high zone and a low zone, the high zone being worth 10 points, the low zone being worth 5 points, and every individual top is worth 25 points for a total of 100 points available for these men in this semifinal round.
Exactly, and I really love this new scoring format because it's easy. It's like the combined score together, it's math. But let's take a first look at the current standings overall. So this is the rankings thus far. Where Zach Gala is, he's in the number 5th spot coming into this semifinal round. So this is their national championships, plus however they do at national team trials, and if you competed in the World Cups, you have bonus points. That's where all those points are coming from. You can find this spreadsheet on usaclimbing.com under the Team USA tab, and then you can click under National Resources. But we're about to get this competition started. We have our first athlete about ready to climb. That's Quinn O'Francia. Something to note about Quinn, he is, I believe, the only man in the semifinal who is also competing in speed. So if he makes the final tonight for Boulder and Lead, he's already in the speed final. That means that he has the longest day because the speed final is happening in between semifinal and finals for Boulder and Lead.
Yeah, Megan, like you said, we've got a big schedule going on today. We've got a lot of climbing lined up. Our men's boulder semifinal this morning, followed closely by the lead semifinal, speed finals in the middle, and then the combined final again this evening. And Quinn, yeah, is our only athlete that is, I think, eligible to do all of the climbing today.
Which is so impressive. And I mean, if he does possibly do that, I'm sure he'll be so psyched. Quick look backstage, you see Sean Bailey, Zach Gala, Ross Fulkerson just getting ready. Jesse Grouper taking some time to get his coordination, his snap ready with the juggling whilst biking. Pretty good there.
Yeah, it's a cool look at these. You know, these guys are so friendly and they always look like they're having fun, even though this is a really big pressure event, especially for some of the men. I think didn't necessarily find the result that they were looking for at nationals, especially ones that we would expect. We saw that national standing, and the Olympic silver medalist from last year is currently not in a national team standing position. So Nathaniel Coleman has some work to do today, and some of those other men you saw on the screen also didn't perform at their best at nationals. So there's a lot to play for. There's a lot of points up for grabs. Team trials is worth more than nationals, so a lot can switch around, but it's pretty cool to see those guys warming up in such a friendly atmosphere, considering the pressure and the high stakes at this event.
Yeah, and that warm-up area they're in is the isolation area. They have to be in there by a certain time. They don't have their phones back there, so there's no way to connect with anyone outside, because when they're coming out to see these boulders, it's the first time that they are seeing them. So the boulder round is completely on-site. They don't get to communicate with each other, so it's important that they stay back there. And it is a nice place to get to kind of relax and warm up with your friends before you get out here and have to fight for all those points.
And as just flashed on your screen, was the scoring format for this boulder. So Quinn has yet to score points on the board. That hold that he is on with his left hand is not a scoring hold, but the next one you can see with the 5 placard. I don't know if they'll give him control of that.
That one's questionable. It'll be interesting. That that'll depend on what that judge thinks. I don't think I would give it to him, but, and I don't know, we'll have to see.
And what's interesting with this new format is, like I said, 100 points available in the boulder round, but there's also 100 points available in the lead round later on this morning. And, so close to
it. He's got the idea now.
But what that means is the rankings matter less than they did at the last Olympics. So obviously you want to do well in comparison to your fellow athletes, but more importantly than that, you just want to be on the board. You want to get as many points as possible. So every low zone, every high zone, and obviously every top counts, both in terms of ranking and trying to be up higher on the leaderboard, but also just getting as many points in a numerical sense as possible before you head into the lead round later on.
And another thing to note is that every time they fall, there's a 0.1 deduction, so that's where that decimal comes into play. So if you get to those placards on your first attempt, that's when you're going to get the full value of the score. So it's interesting because with the women's competition, that's what we saw from Annie Sanders last night. She basically had a perfect competition because she topped the lead route, did all 4 boulders, but the score wasn't 200 because she fell 4 times.
Exactly. And that was an amazing round of climbing. If anybody missed that, you can check out the replay on the USA Climbing YouTube page. But we did crown our team trials champion last night, Annie Sanders, and she did so in amazing style, topping all 4 boulders and topping the lead route with only 5 falls, in bouldering, or 4 falls or something.
Yeah, 4 or 5, something like that.
But taking away from her total 200 score. But a great demo from her on what's possible in terms of scoring all the points you possibly can.
It was absolutely incredible, and I don't doubt that we'll see something like that from the men tonight. Quino Francia knows exactly what he needs to do here, just needs to figure out how to execute. Now, it is tricky. Nice! With just 25 seconds left, let's see if he can make it into that 10. He has to be really smart here with his route reading, as far as I can tell, reading it perfectly. Now this really dynamic move to the finish is going to cross. I was wondering, we were kind of thinking more of the shoulder, but wow, getting it done just in the nick of time. Quino Francia, nicely done. That was an incredible fight there, and perseverance, never giving up. Out next we have Palmer Larson, Salt Lake City, very familiar face in these competitions.
Yeah, and he, I believe, is our oldest athlete in the semifinal round at 27 years old.
27 years young.
27 years young. What's really great about Palmer is he's also a coach full-time in Salt Lake City. There's a couple of his athletes that were actually competing in qualifiers and in semifinals for the women yesterday. So it's really cool to see somebody who's able to coach the next generation, but then also still compete at a high level and be right in there with everybody else, making semifinals and appearing here on our screen today.
I think it's safe to say that Palmer has spent more time in ISO than any other athlete this week, because he's not only just going to his isolation times, but also for his athletes that he's coaching. He was here all day yesterday, in and out of isolation with his athletes. So
he was telling me that he thought being in isolation was more relaxing than watching.
That's good.
I think that's probably a hot take, but if it works for him, then great.
Looks like he's reading this right away, so he knows exactly what he needs to do. That blue hold that he's trying to toe hook with, part of it has that actual friction texture. The other part is the slippery texture. That's what we call the dual texture, because there are dual textures on the hold. So the men have to be very specific about where that toe is going and making sure it doesn't hit any of the slippery part of the hold.
And Palmer is one of the few that works in a different capacity within climbing, coaching. He also sets a little bit for the team. We have a few athletes coming up who do the same, and I think that's really helpful. You can see him reading that problem correctly right away. I think working in other capacities allows him to understand the movement better and be able to anticipate what is required of him on this boulder.
Exactly, because he immediately came out, saw it right away, and remember, first time he's seeing the boulder. In the final round, they get a chance to actually look at the boulders ahead of time, but not in the semifinal round. It's the first time for everyone. When that 5-minute clock starts, they turn around, they look at the boulder, and they have to try to problem solve immediately.
Another look at this toe hook attempt there. Maybe just a little far, actually. He hit that volume
overshot
right where it connected with the wall, and just it's a little bit hard to correct for that when you're flying midair.
It definitely is. I almost think, too, if he can kind of aim more towards the middle, it looks like he's a little far to the left. Plenty of time taking a little break here.
And like we've said, every athlete gets 5 minutes on the clock, and when that time is done, they have to let go. So it's really important for these athletes to make sure to use their time well and leave themselves enough time every time they pull on the wall to get to the next point zone or get to the top.
Exactly. Oh, so close. It looked like he got caught on the volume a little bit that time as well. You know, he is pretty tall, 6 feet plus 4. So I wonder if that's because we keep noticing he's kind of overshooting the toe hook, whereas Quinn is a little smaller, 5'9" plus 1. It looked like he kind of got set into the toe hook a little quicker. I think that being a little taller, Palmer's having to kind of aim differently. He's not fitting in that box as nicely.
Yeah, this move potentially is what we call just a smaller box move, and toe hooks are notorious for being more comfortable for one height versus another.
I almost wonder if I think that could either pull. That was really close. Either pull up a little more like he just did to like shorten that a bit, or if he could. I feel like it'd be hard to catch with your knee a little bent, but that could be another option.
Yeah, we see him correcting well. For Quinn was aiming that toe hook sort of for the middle of that pinch, and Palmer's going a little bit lower on it, I think, in an attempt
to a little longer.
Yeah, extend the space.
That was closer for sure, especially in that slow-mo. You can really see how he was almost in that place where he created the right opposition to actually stay on. But again, we didn't see Quinn stick this move till about 30 seconds left on the clock, so Palmer has plenty of time to finish this boulder. Luckily, this boulder doesn't have too many moves after. As long as you read it right, I feel like pretty doable.
Yeah, exactly. As we saw from Quinn, the top also climbs very quickly, so
I think it's obvious too. I feel like it's pretty obvious that you need to kind of get into that body position and slowly just kind of work your way to the right with the feet in the same place the whole way.
I see him getting a little frustrated there. Sometimes it just feels like that 5 minutes isn't enough.
That's true. So again, Palmer with no points on the board yet, but still has plenty of time to get to the 5, even the 10, I would assume, at this point, if he can just nail this little poke. Oh, that was so much closer. He's going to end with that, and we'll see the next climber out, and actually we'll have 2 climbers out now.
Yeah, semifinals is really exciting because eventually we will have 4 climbers on the wall at one time. Lots of sports action. Nobody's going to be bored watching this round. Nope. But for now, we have 2.
Yeah. Adam Shahar just stepping out onto the mats. 17 years old, out of Tenafly, New Jersey. Becoming a very familiar face on the elite scene. Again, a lot of the athletes will immediately grab the brush at the start of their 5 minutes. There's kind of a few reasons why. One, you want to brush the holds. Also, it gives you a chance to really make sure you're fully looking at the boulder. Sometimes it's easy to miss holds, so it gives you a good chance to kind of take a second, and at the same time, you're making sure the field of play is set up nicely for yourself.
A little bit of a boggle on the first move here from Adam. Quick to pull on again.
There he goes.
See if he figures out.
Yep,
Looks
he
like
already
he does.
sees it. setting up nicely. Wow, right to it. Just needs to make sure he reads the little foot scoot on the toe hook there. Heel doesn't really sit there. I'm pretty sure Quinn had his toe on there. It looked like a little bit of a better method. Looked like you could pull a bit better. But also it depends on what you are more familiar with. Now we have our split screen because we have Quinn on men's number 2 and Adam on men's number 1. Like Allison mentioned earlier, at a certain point during the round, we will have 4 men on all 4 boulders. Remember, there's 20 men in this round, so as we keep going in the next period, we'll see another set of men out there, and then eventually we'll see 3 men and 4 men. So it gets a little chaotic, but luckily we generally can see most of what's going on when we've got the 4 men going together.
And this format is what we call 5 on, 5 off. So when you are not seeing your favorite athlete on the wall, they are behind that divider just to the left of Adam there, resting and using their 5 off well to try to recover. You can see Palmer Larson and Ben Hanna there resting and recovering and getting ready for their next boulder. So they spend 5 minutes on the wall trying their best to get to the top, and then they go back behind that curtain for 5 minutes off to rest before coming out again. So that's why we have this shuffle and these athletes coming on and off the floor, eventually equating and having 4 athletes on the wall at once.
And that area is what we call the secondary isolation area, because the rest of the men are in the main isolation area until it's time for them to start their round. So if you didn't see your favorite person back there, don't worry, they're just in isolation. They don't have to move to those chairs yet. Adam Shahar figuring out how to get back up into the section, choosing to go with the toe this time, like we saw Quinn do. Gonna bump instead of cross. Also looks like pretty chill method. Just requires a match now. I just feel like that toe hook is so good, so you're kind of set up in a nice way. It looks like he's gonna go left hand as well. Oh, nope, gonna go with the shoulder. So now we've seen this boulder topped in kind of the 2 ways that we would assume people would do it. Nicely done. More time on the clock than Quinn had. Notice, go ahead.
Well, I was gonna say,
yeah, I know.
Quinn is moving through this slab honestly well. Megan and I were able to stand under this boulder and check it out a little bit earlier, and it looks nasty.
It looks so gross. We're like, ooh, that's not gonna be fun.
It maybe will be interesting to see what shoes these athletes pick on this boulder. One thing that's interesting about climbing shoes is every shoe brand and shoe style within that brand has different levels of stiffness. And when you are standing on volumes like you can see Quinn doing here, his whole foot is on that yellow part of the volume. His heels dropped really nice. Sometimes when you have stiffer shoes, it's harder to do that because the shoes like to keep their shape instead of splooging out onto the volume on your full foot. But I think Quinn made a good shoe choice here. It looks like he's moving really nicely along through these volumes, going up to that little tiny yellow hold and out to the 10 zone, which is actually one of the better holds on this entire boulder, even though it's the smallest. This is a really great round so far for Quinn. He's really moving slowly up towards that finish hold, trying to be patient, take his time, figure out the exact body position he needs to be in.
Oh, man, that was so close. I don't think he has enough time, unfortunately, to get back on the wall. I agree, though. Shoe choice seemed really good for him. What's interesting is, you know, during a final round, you get to look at the boulders, so a lot of men will bring out extra shoes for that time period if they see something, but it'll be interesting to see how many of them bring out extra shoes in this semifinal round, because like you said, if they have a stiff shoe, that boulder is going to be so much harder to get through standing on all those volumes.
Great score though for Quinn O'Francie after the second boulder, 33.6 points out of the possible 50 in the boulders that he has climbed so far, so I think he should be happy with that so far. A little heartbreaking to be so close to another 25 points on the top of that second boulder, but he's got 2 left, so
plenty of time to still get some points, and honestly already, like you said, off to a great start. Ben Hanna on men's number 1 as Palmer Larson brushes men's number 2, and Palmer generally a very good slab climber, also likes slab boulders in general, so probably coming out and seeing this feels like, okay, psyched for that one.
A little bit of relief maybe after the first boulder.
Not everyone's first thought when they see a slab. Definitely wasn't mine, but little mishap there for Ben Hanna. Didn't quite get into the toe, but knows exactly what he needs to do and has plenty of time to get it done.
And your eyes don't deceive you. He is wearing a Team Slovenia shirt, but he does compete for the U.S. The athletes, it's a really cool thing that happens at World Cups and especially at Youth World Championships. Athletes are able to trade their jerseys with other countries and with their friends, and it's a really special thing that these athletes are able to do at World Cup. So I think Ben probably traded one of his U.S. team jersey shirts for that Slovenia shirt, and he's repping it here now, so that's pretty cool.
Yeah, it is such a fun tradition that we climbers have when we travel internationally. Ben trying to make quick work of this boulder, just a few tries on that opening move, but seems like he knows what to do. It'll be interesting to see who chooses to go left hand, who chooses to go right hand. Kind of looks like he's setting up to go right. Oh, nope, going left. Wow, I feel like that finish hold is a lot better than I assumed from the ground.
Yeah, from below it, we were sort of thinking that going left hand like Ben just did was not going to be possible, but he proved us wrong.
Yeah. Definitely thought we would see some people try it. I just didn't know how successful they would be, but it honestly looks like the better method if you have the biceps to do it. I'm sure some athletes will choose to go with the right hand. Palmer trying to get in a comfortable position to stand up here and get to that little yellow hold where he can now stem between the volumes using every inch of his reach there. Oh my goodness, just on 2 fingers. Oh,
You know, slab climbing is so interesting. It always feels, on every boulder you try, but especially on slab, it always feels like you want to be going to the next hold right away, but a lot of times you have to make sure you're in a comfortable body position before you move up. And I think in that case, Palmer went up with his left hand to that little yellow hold, hoping he could get purchase off of it to get him into a better position. And I think we saw with Quino Francia, he was able to step out, be in a comfortable spot before using that tiny yellow hold. And I think that was a lot better. You can see that hold is almost nothing. So when Palmer went up to it with just 2 fingers, that really wasn't going to give him enough purchase to move upward. So I think he really needs to do a little bit more fancy footwork and get into a better, what we call stemmed position, a little bit of a splits action between those 2 yellow volumes, and we'll see if he can get back up there and correct for that this time.
Exactly, and I think it's more enticing oftentimes when you're on those lower angled walls because the holds are generally closer to you. So when you see a hand hold, you're like, oh, I guess I'll just grab it, and you kind of jump the sequence a bit. And maybe it's possible, oftentimes it's just a lot harder. And in that scenario we saw with him, like, maybe he would have made it work, but he would have exerted so much energy, and if he just was a little more patient and thought about moving his lower body first, he would have been set up in a much better position and probably conserved more energy. Likely he realized that, and he will adjust on this attempt.
And you could see him sticking his fingers into the screw holes of the volumes there to help keep him on the wall. That is allowed in the rule book. Those tiny screw holes you see that line the outside of all those volumes, you can put your fingers in those. That's totally fair game. You cannot put your fingers in the wall. So you can see we have T-nut holes all over the wall, all those dots in the wall. Those are where we put we put the bolts in the holds to attach them to the wall. You are not allowed to put your fingers in those, but the screw holes on the volumes themselves are fair game.
So when we saw Quinn on this part of the boulder, he was able to kind of get his feet up a little easier. Like we mentioned before, Palmer is a bit taller, so trying to get his feet that high the way Quinn did is kind of hard because then his knees are in his chest. He's trying to make it happen, but it's just a little bit out of the comfort zone. I think going out to that palm is a good idea to try to move the feet up. I feel like he almost has it figured out. I feel like he doesn't have enough time to try it again, but just kind of giving it another look over, being like, dang it, I know I should have done that boulder, but not going to happen in this round. But great efforts there from Palmer Larson.
Yeah, I think
still gets a score, 4.9 on that.
I think, like you said, when you turn around and you know a boulder is kind of your specialty and you're not quite able to make it happen, I think it's a little bit hard to stay positive in that moment, but hopefully he can use his time in that chair behind that curtain to do a little reset before heading out and on to his 3rd boulder.
Exactly. Gavin Albright coming out to get on men's number 1, his first boulder of the round. Just taking a few seconds to brush, as most of the men are. Looks like Adam Shahar will be the first on the wall in this round on men's number 2. A little tricky start here. Obvious what you want to do, but tricky in finding the balance position. Those stand-up moves are interesting because it's enticing to want to kind of go for the hold, but when you do that, you don't necessarily stand up as tall as you're supposed to. So in reality, you want to focus more on standing up and then kind of touching the hold after, because otherwise you don't get your hips in the right position necessarily. So we saw him make that adjustment very quickly from the first attempt to the second.
We have Gavin pulling on to that first move, opting to try a heel hook method and then immediately deciding.
Really nice route reading of the boulder on the right for Quino Francia into that dyno. This boulder for the men, very powerful, very sustained right from the start. Big jump right out of the gate.
Yeah, and I think probably quite technically demanding towards the top as well as powerful. It's always interesting when there's a combination of both. You see Adam Shahar here having solved the first move, getting that foot up high before going up. Really smart climbing from him.
Again, around the same height as Quinn at 5'9" and +1, actually the same. So I think, you know, the extra long limbs that Palmer had, that stand-up, he just couldn't really do it in the same way that Adam and Quinn were able to do. And that's just climbing, right? There's some moves that they're better if you're a little taller, and some moves better if you're a little shorter. It just depends on what the box is. But the route setter's goal is to make sure they have multiple situations throughout the round so that it's not favored to one or the other. They're going to challenge both of those boxes in different ways.
Quinn O'Francia having solved the jump again at the start of this boulder. Once again securing that 5-zone hold and not being able to what looks like press out of it. I think that situation, you're getting your foot over left and trying to push up into the next hold. You see Adam
back up to where we saw him on his previous attempt. Now nicely into the stem.
And now he just lost his footing here a little bit last time. Volume climbing on a slab like this is a little bit precarious and risky, and you can feel like you're in a comfortable position 1 second, and as soon as you just shift your hips a little bit, you lose it. So he's doing a really good job of moving slowly and making sure he's making minor adjustments in his body position and balance before going to the finish hold. We saw Quinn O'Francia try to go to that finish hold with both hands, and I think that was sort of a last-ditch effort for him to avoid teetering off. So Adam did a great job there of doing what I like to call the fast slow, where he just used a little bit of speed to get into the next position, but that was really great body control from him and a great top.
Yeah, and just being able to solve that boulder pretty quickly, having that time on the clock left over so he didn't need to rush. I feel like a lot of Quinn's mistakes were because he was having to rush. He didn't have a lot of time left. Efficiency is so important in these rounds because that's when you'll be able to climb the way you need to in order to be successful, because the minute you start rushing, these boulders are too difficult and too tricky to be rushing through them. So having that leftover time on the clock is really clutch.
Yeah, and for him, reading that score there on the screen of 49.2, that does mean he topped both of his first two boulders, and the decimal place there is his indication that he fell 8 times between the two of those boulders, because as we've said before, you do lose 0.1 of a score value every time you fall.
Quinn back up on men's number 3, easily through that jump, just has to figure out this press. It's interesting because it's a press into another press, so heavy on the shoulders, that boulder.
And this wall angle, yeah, I was going to say
the wall for
this
sure.
Wall angle has been interesting all week here. The setters have been really liking putting these giant volumes in the overhang section.
It's like steep on steep.
Steep on steep. It creates really interesting gymnastics, dynamic, and technical climbing. It sort of combines all of the requirements that it possibly could, as you see him really stretching out, pressing out of that position.
Lots of mobility necessary there.
Back mobility and securing that 10 zone. That's the first time we've seen him up there.
Just 5 seconds left on the clock. Into the buzzer beaters this round. Will he make it happen? Oh, so close. Great effort from Quinn O'Francia. Just a quick look at our route setters. They seem really pleased so far with the round. You know, they always love to see the athletes come out here, try their hardest, and I think Quinn's been doing a great job of showing that in the round. So up next we have Charlie Barron getting ready for his first attempt.
Megan, we talked about yesterday, a lot of the women, if not all of the women, really like both disciplines in this combined format. They really like bouldering and they really like lead, and a lot of them are comparably good at both. In the men's round, we do have more specialists who prefer bouldering over lead, Charlie Barron being one of them. So he's really hoping for a good round here today, wants to secure as many points as he can out of that possible 100, because he knows that it is his strong suit, and he most likely is not expecting to make up ground in the lead round later today.
Yeah, it's really tricky for the athletes who are clearly really good at one discipline and not as up to par at the other discipline, because it puts so much pressure on this discipline specifically. If you have a bad round and you know you're a good lead climber, there's just a little extra safety net there going into the lead round, barring any, random disaster. Ben Hanna quickly figuring out the beta here on men's number 2. Another one of the competitors on the shorter side, so fitting into this box rather nicely. Really, that's not too small. 5'9" isn't small.
That's not too small.
No. Got some smaller ones in
He is
here.
really using that left hand little yellow hold, though, and we saw some of the shorter athletes not really use it at all until they were in this stable stem position. And you can see he's really struggling to get low enough to be able to...
I was going to say, I feel like I don't know if necessarily as much in training, but in comps, he often grabs like nasty things, like even like behind holds and whatnot. So he's quick to bear down on small things in competition. So that's not as surprising. But like you were saying, perhaps keeping him from getting in the right position within the stem.
Palmer Larson back on the wall for men's number 3, eyeing up that jump. I don't know if we saw on our screens Quinn Francia actually sticking that jump. So once he pulls on, maybe it'll be our first look at this first move of men's boulder number 3. Eyeing up that 5 zone. Looks like he's going to go straight for it with his left hand.
A little short on the left. Earlier we did get to see Quinn a couple times on it, and I think he just had a little more power and really threw himself into the left to carry him over to the right with the momentum. I kind of love those kind of jumps. It's interesting because when you see 2 holds, you think, oh, I need to kind of look at both of them, but really this is one of the ones where you need to go towards one side to then catapult your momentum to the other side.
And from a spectating point of view, it's easy to think all jumps are created equal and require the same things. And in reality, the route setters are really good at creating new jumps that have different demands, different types of coordination, and different requirements for these athletes. We see Ben Hanna here back up to his high point. He's going to try to sink a little bit lower. As he does here, you can see him dropping his left knee to try to lower his center of gravity to be in a more stable position.
Looks a little better. That left leg is shaking a lot, though. Able to readjust there a bit. Charlie Barron up high on men's number 1. Needs to figure out how to get through this section. Looks like he has the right idea. Is looking a lot more comfortable. Again, one of the men in this competition who really specializes in bouldering. So to do well in the boulder round is important for him. So a top here is honestly necessary. And just with one more hand, he'll make it happen. There he goes, a top for Charlie Barron. He'll be really happy with that.
Like we said before, Charlie really needs this bouldering round to go well if he has any hope of making it into the final round. You never know what can happen. You can just randomly have a really good lead day, but for him in particular, bouldering is his favorite. Bouldering is his strong suit, so he's definitely one to watch this morning.
I will say the combined format and this combined format, the old combined format, there's something about it that really brings out the best in people when you think maybe perhaps they might not have something in them. I think Nathaniel Coleman was a great example of that at the Olympics. That was the best lead climb of his life.
When he needed it.
So, like you said, you can never really count anybody out. So just because lead's not Charlie's specialist, or not a specialty for Charlie, doesn't mean it can't happen. Palmer Larson sticking that jump and now trying to work through the press section. Not a lot of time left, but could get into the 10, I believe at least. A little slip there. But a top on the right for Ben Hanna. Very happy with that. I know he's been a little frustrated in the bouldering round, so the qualification round for sure he did not necessarily feel like he had the best round, nor did he necessarily enjoy the round, so I know he'll be really happy with that.
Once again, Ben Hanna securing the top on the first 2 boulders with a score of 49.7. Only a few falls to his name there between the 2, so shaping up to be a really great round for him.
And now our first look at Nathan Sato, 16 years old, getting a few brushes in on men's number 1. Definitely one of the athletes who good at bouldering, also very, very good at leads. So, and on one of the young ones, only 16 years old. So,
although he was quite low scoring in the bouldering in the qualification round and had one of the most outstanding lead climbs of the day and pushed himself all the way into this semifinal position when he was not looking like he was going to make this round after the bouldering event.
He definitely is weighted higher on the lead side, I would say, but I feel like he did just kind of have a bad bouldering round, you know. But again, with this format, it's pretty cool that that can happen. A quick look at our current standings. Ben Hanna at the top of the leaderboard with that 49.7 from topping that last boulder and topping the first. Charlie Barron in 4th place currently with his top of men's number 1. Palmer Larson. That is kind of a tongue twister. I never really noticed that. 9.3 has yet to get a top, but getting some points on the board nonetheless. Nathan getting up into men's number 1 has to do this little pogo and hand, what do you want to call that? Pogo hand throw. Pogo hand throw stick. Whoa, facing out, Adam Shahar giving us some different beta. Oh, that looks really uncomfortable.
My wrists hurt
like
just
how
watching
I know,
that.
Seriously.
Oof. You can see on the right side of your screen, Quino Francia has moved off that 5 zone into a sort of standing position on that giant volume, inching his way up to the 10-point zone.
Nice.
Now he's just going to have a giant jump left to the finish, so we'll see how he decides to solve this move. Really dynamic, really powerful. That hold is not
just a little
very
short.
Good. It's not
the
terrible.
right hand or the left hand?
The finish hold.
The finish hold. The finish hold is okay, right? Just really far away. Also, that left side of the volume, there's a quick look at that finish hold. It honestly looks worse from this angle than when you're standing under it.
It's
but
also
that left side of the volume is so slippery too.
When a hold is tilted towards one direction or the other, it's really important for these athletes when they're jumping to think about that and to try to turn their body the opposite direction so that they can have what we call opposition on that hold to be able to hold the position even if the hold isn't necessarily in cut.
Gavin Albright getting up into the middle of the boulder, choosing to go out left hand to kind of palm on that volume, but slipping a little prematurely. Adam Shahar back up. Looks like he's going to go face out again. This is very interesting. I'm surprised he doesn't feel like this is really painful on the wrist. Also, I wonder if...
It will be really interesting to see if this works. I think facing out is easier to get up. It's easier to press and get into a position where your arms are straight and you feel like you're not having to exert your muscles anymore. But it does from... great move
save. From... his pointer finger almost being taken out by that blocked hold.
But as I was saying, it will be interesting to see if anybody facing out finds any success.
I love this little hop into the 10 zone with the heel hook. Oh, the tension. Just losing it there. I'm not noticing the men look at their hands as much as I did during the women's round, so that is definitely a good sign. Hopefully their skin is holding up a bit better. Nathan Sato back on the wall, men's number 1.
Going for that pogo toe.
Didn't throw the hand up that time. You know, I have noticed, especially when athletes go from the youth side to the elite side, oftentimes if you've done well in bouldering or if you've done well in boulder and in lead on the youth side, it's harder to break into boulder on the elite side than it is into lead on the elite side. I feel like they have more success in the lead discipline quicker, just because the boulder discipline is just anything can happen. Things change all the time. The boulders can be your style, not your style. There's also this power requirement, I think, when you move into the elite side that isn't necessarily as prevalent in the youth side. So I think you have to take sometimes a couple years to kind of gain that. And I feel like with Nathan, that's kind of what we're seeing here. Like,
absolutely. I think boulder athletes tend to be a lot less consistent than lead athletes. Just by nature, individual lead climbing moves are all easier than all the moves you see in bouldering, just because you have to do them stacked one on top of each other, and there's an endurance factor. And so if you have that endurance, if you have that great lead capability, it carries over really nicely, and the requirements doesn't really change a lot. But in bouldering, there's so many different combinations of moves that the route setters can put on the wall, and especially if you're a youth athlete, you maybe need some time to grow those big power muscles too.
Exactly.
And so we do see athletes carrying their skill level into bouldering, but needing a little bit more time to build up that power and that experience on a variety of boulder problems.
And I think the consistency is just a little harder to reach than in the lead discipline.
Absolutely.
I feel like it comes faster in the lead discipline.
Here we have our current boulder standings. Adam Shahar with a score of 54 on top of the leaderboard. Quino Francia 42.8, followed by Ben Hanna with a 49.7. And of course, a lot of these athletes towards the bottom of this list haven't completed their rounds yet. You can see Charlie Barron there in 4th place, having only done 1 boulder. And he is currently on his 2nd boulder on the right side of your screen, working his way through this slab.
Also looks like he has a pretty good shoe choice on. I believe those shoes are on the softer side. As far as Sportiva shoes go. Kind of struggling to get into the right position there, but
he is taller.
He is taller.
So I think that that space is a little bit smaller for him. Same with Luke Meering, as we see on the side of your screen, electing not to go up with his right hand at the same time as his foot. I think that was a really smart decision for him because he is also taller. And so he was able to create that space between his hand and his foot by not going up with the hand.
Yeah, I totally agree. Also, depending on where your dimensions are, if you have really long arms, it might be better to just do it that way. And I feel like he is a +3 wingspan, so probably good. Gonna go with the cross. Real quick top there for Luke Meering.
And Luke did a really great job at Boulder Nationals. He did make finals there, and he had, I think, what was quite a disappointing result for him in the qualification round in bouldering. He was below that 20 athlete cutoff for the semifinal, and he also had an outstanding lead route and was able to turn it around for himself and push himself into the semifinal position by far. It was a really great performance from him, and it's hard when you have a disappointing round to keep positive, and he did a really good job of that. So I think he'll be happy to have his boulder round starting off well today.
Yeah, I think Luke has always shown a lot of perseverance within rounds and just over the years, and so it's really nice to see him starting off this round well. Ben Hanna in a good position, just trying to figure out how to get that right foot up. Ooh, fully spread there. Really nice job into a drop knee there. Oof, that looks so uncomfortable. Kyra Condi cheering Ben on, also taking photos with her dad, Tom, right next to her.
Kyra lives in Salt Lake with Ben. They train together a lot. She sees him all the time. She had an amazing competition yesterday. She ended up in 2nd place in the event and 2nd place overall, so that put her right back onto the national team. I think she'll be looking to gun for the next Olympics. She obviously was one of the U.S. Olympians at Tokyo 2020, but she is always such a great teammate. She's here cheering everybody on. She was just climbing hard last night, and quick turnaround to being here this morning.
She is definitely one of the athletes you're always seeing in the crowd, no matter what round of competition, whether she didn't make a round or if it's the men competing or anybody else competing. She is a really good supportive teammate and athlete, and yeah, it's cool to see her taking photos right now too. I feel like that's a newer thing that she's getting into. So
I actually have the insight that she just got that camera and she's very excited
I know,
about
that's what she said. She mentioned that the other day. She was like, I just got this camera, and she was like, I've never taken photos at a climbing competition. And then she was like, oh, these are actually pretty good. This camera's great. But her dad, Tom, used to take photos all the time. We were all sent many, many photos of ourselves when he was at competitions. So it runs in the family.
You got a good teacher.
Ben Hanna trying to get back up into the middle section of men's number 3. Honestly, I feel like that drop knee drops him down. I feel like hopefully he'll adjust and kind of stand up into that foothold a bit more to create that press easily through that dyno again.
And you can see in the foreground, Ben's got his fan pumping full blast. A lot of these athletes do come from drier climates, and it's really important for your skin to stay dry when you're climbing to have the best friction possible. And we are in Texas, so it is quite humid here.
Though drier today than yesterday, luckily.
That's true, but these athletes do bring these fans out with them to cool their skin down. Ben Hanna back into his crazy drop knee position, really fighting to hold the tension, inching towards that 10 hold.
It brings him down just a little too much.
Not quite for Ben Hanna.
The fan thing's kind of funny. Actually, we see a lot of fans out. Actually, all 3 of them have fans right now. It started, I feel like, the last 3 years or something, where people started bringing them to comps, because there is nothing in the rule book that says you cannot. But it's kind of funny how there was just this influx of people with fans all of a sudden at climbing competitions. Oftentimes when people are climbing outside, they bring fans, so it makes sense
I think that's
bring them here.
I think that's an outdoor climbing tactic that has slowly
crept its
wiggled
way
its
in.
way into competition climbing. It is really important to keep your skin as good as possible throughout a round, and that fan is actually a really great tactic to cool your skin down between attempts. Once again, you only have 5 minutes on the clock for each boulder, so it's hard to keep your skin cool between tries, and that fan is a great tactic to be able to do so. So not all athletes have them. I wouldn't even say most have them necessarily at this point, but you will see a lot of people do choose to bring those out with them. And we see Adam making this first move of men's number 4. It looked really easy.
Well, and a lot of the athletes, you would think, oh, maybe they come out to the event a little earlier to acclimate to the change in temps. But I feel like in competitions like this, not so much the case. For the Olympics, I do know the Olympic athletes did get to Japan a bit earlier because there as well, humidity was a huge part of dealing with the new climate there. But, you know, these competitions, I mean, we started this in the middle of the week, so a lot of these athletes actually can't come out too early to get acclimated. So most of them are just coming here the day before or a couple days before at most. So they really don't have time to acclimate their skin.
Hugo Hoyer really quickly up onto his first boulder problem of the morning. Men's number 1 really eased his way into this boulder and now is fighting for the top here. A
Really
seemingly simple top for Hugo.
Definitely, and if you tuned into nationals, you saw his face everywhere. He was in the boulder final, the lead final, 4th in bouldering, 3rd in lead. First year of competition on the elite side, so off to a really great start here in this round as well. Gavin Albright trying to get into the press. Looks like he might need to focus on pressing with his right hand a bit more before he tries to rock over as much. Kind of put him in a weird position to slip, as Adam Shahar to the right of your screen is back in the middle of men's number 4, just trying to go with the right amount of speed to that 10 zone. It's kind of a delicate movement. You have to be really accurate. It's a little bit of a dead point. You can't really see where the hold is from that side, from where he is on the wall. So he's kind of guessing and hoping he's lining up properly as he kind of pops into it. You know, athletes are not allowed to put tick marks on the wall. If they do, that ends their attempts on that boulder. So you might see that outside or in the gym, but you can't do that here.
This is shaping up to be quite a hard round. It's always interesting when you have an athlete come out first and do really well, like we saw with Quino Francia. He does still have the high point on a couple of these boulders that have stumped some of these other athletes. So although he was heartbreakingly close to some of the tops and wasn't quite able to secure them, I think it's cool to see the athletes that come out first having that low pressure situation help them get as many points as possible. But as you can see now, Adam Shahar has secured the 10-point zone. We'll see if he can fly up towards that finish move. A little bit interesting. I think this cross through is the way the route set is intended.
Nice. Needs to have 2 hands up there. Gonna make it happen. Nice climbing by Adam Shahar.
An unbelievable round for him, really.
Yeah, he's setting himself up really nicely. 3 tops, just didn't get the high zone on that 3rd boulder, but many, many points for him. Great way to be moving into the lead round as Gavin Albright back up on men's number 3 through the jump. Got to figure out this press here. Almost there. Oh, just struggling. So much tricep there. Kind of looking around like I have no idea what to do here, but he was doing the right thing, not going to make it happen. Maybe a good idea to save some energy. Still 1 more boulder for him to get on. Another quick look at that secondary isolation area as you see the men resting or getting ready to come out for the next boulder. Also, once they finish climbing, they go back there and wait, and then they can come out and watch the rest of the round. Always a nice part about going earlier in the round is getting to watch the rest of the athletes. Our first look at Bob Countryman. Full name Dylan Bob Countryman.
Dylan Bob Countryman. But he was the one to watch in the bouldering round at Nationals. He is our national bouldering champion. His fellow national bouldering champion was Andy Sanders last night. They are a similar age, both very young.
15 and 16.
15 and 16, first years on the circuit, so it was really, really...
Dylan second.
First and second.
First and second.
First few years on the circuit, and it was really amazing to see Bob and Annie shine at Nationals, and I think Bob is for sure looking to follow up that performance with a good one here today. We have our current Boulder standings with Adam Shahar holding it down in that first position.
Yeah, great round for Adam. And we were talking about this during the women's event, but if you can get kind of above that 50 at least in the bouldering round going into the lead round, that's great. High up in the 70s is even better. Obviously 100 points is the goal, but kind of below the 50 in the boulder round is a little unnerving. Unless you are a stellar lead climber, then you might not have to worry as much, but you do have to perform to your ability, which then puts a little more pressure on you. Bob getting ready for his attempt on men's number 1, a boulder that I think would suit him really well. He's very dynamic, powerful, has a lot of coordination, climbs very gymnastic, chooses to go with just the toe, which we've seen work, kind of falls out of it. I do think his height would work fine to throw the toe and the hand at the same time, but we'll have to see how he adjusts.
Here we have Charlie Barron on men's number 3 and Ben Hanna on men's number 4, already up to that 10-point zone. Let's see if he figures out that step through of the left foot onto that small pink foothold. I think that really is going to be key for these athletes getting to the finish hold, although he is looking like he's maybe going to try to...
wow.
As I said, that switches back to the right hand.
I will say, I think maybe for the taller climbers, this jump wouldn't be so bad. Ben almost doing it there. I do think, like you're saying, going left foot might be a little more secure. It's just getting that left foot up is a little difficult, and Ben kind of at that 5'9" height, so kind of in the middle of probably being able to do both betas, honestly. Bob making quick work of men's number 1 as Luke Muring starts to get through into that middle section on men's number 2.
And our taller athletes have really been struggling with that slab section. They are tending to palm down like we see Luke doing here first before trying to go up to that hand. Has been a little bit of has suckered our athletes into trying that beta, especially the ones that are taller. Have had a harder time, I think, reading that boulder and getting into the position that they need to get into because it feels so uncomfortable.
You know who's going to be really interesting to watch on that boulder is Ross Fulkerson, just because, yes, he's a tall competitor, but he has such good mobility and flexibility that I could see him choosing to quickly get into that small box.
Absolutely, and we saw that with Ben Hanna, who is not short for sure, figuring out his way around it. But yeah, some of our taller climbers, I honestly would have put Charlie Barron at the top of that boulder as well, and I think he's fighting on boulder number 3 now, probably a little frustrated by that boulder. Ben Hanna back on men's number 4, doing this first move really easily. Going to try to get back into that 10 zone position to be heading towards the finish. This is a very interesting style of boulder. When you end up with a heel hook like he has on the left, it's really, really hard to make yourself leave that position. That heel hook feels so stable, and as we've speculated, the easiest way to do this is to, again, cross that left foot through. Only time will tell, but it is hard to make yourself do that when that toe hook that he has or the heel hook feels so insecure. Charlie Barron coming up with some new age foot lead beta.
Not a bad idea. I mean, it's always good to be creative. We'll see if he can get out of it. We saw Ben Hanna just coming up a little short on men's number 2. Luke back where he was on the 5 before, see if he can adjust here and figure out how to get up into a more comfortable stemming position.
Charlie Barron fighting for that body position. He also is quite flexible. He grew up doing gymnastics, so he's been known to bust out the splits and get into weird handstand positions on the wall, and he was really showing that side of himself there in the middle of that boulder.
That position, though, is so heavy on the shoulders and the triceps, and given that, you know, today's event is a lot of climbing, maybe a good idea not to expend too much energy, so maybe he'll try something different if he does try again. Ben Hanna back onto the 10. He hasn't even really tried to cross the foot through, really kind of sticking to that beta to just try to jump, and he's been very, very close on each attempt. Oh, I think this time he's going to try to go with his right hand, maybe second-guessing it now. Yeah, I mean, I think that's a good idea. Luke looked like he was close to kind of throwing his foot up, but he kind of lost his balance last time. It's hard because he's so lanky, and so when he throws his leg up, his knee keeps kind of hitting his elbow when he tries to get it on this volume inside. So that's like a very difficult position. But now bringing the left foot up first, which is kind of what he should have done the whole time.
Absolutely. Ben Hanna, you could see him shaking his head no at the root centers there as he walks off screen. But there are current boulder standings. Ben Hanna putting himself into second place with that 64.6 score, just behind Adam Shahar. And Charlie Barron has secured that fourth place spot without even doing his fourth boulder. So,
yeah, in a really good spot right now as we get our first look at Brian Squire. I almost said Ben because Ben just walked by. I was like, wait a minute. No, that's a different B. Yeah, Brian is going to be out for men's number 1.
Brian has also been training with that huge contingency of athletes that are coming from Salt Lake City. He goes to the U now, just being 18. A lot of the athletes in the country that are going to college are choosing to go to Salt Lake City because that's where the National Training Center is. Coming up with this interesting heel hook beta. We've seen athletes try this and then get a little bit stuck.
Yeah, it can get you in the right position to get to the 5, but then you really can't go anywhere else. You have to quickly realize that the beta is kind of off as Hugo Hoyer gets on men's number 2, slowly working his way through this delicate section of volumes. Seems like a lot of the men, they must have at least a mid-stiff soft shoe or a pretty soft shoe, because I haven't seen anyone come off the boulder and switch shoes yet, so it hasn't really been an issue here.
Shoes that Hugo has on are about as soft as they get.
Yeah, exactly. But I feel like we have seen a few that were like, I don't think they're on the softest side, but
Hugo's really fighting for this match here. We can actually, he's right by our booth and he's facing us. And he really, really fighting for that match.
But on that first attempt, you need to fight the most. Brian just kind of fully missing the toe hook there. Just needs to get the right momentum, which another one of those coordination learn moves. With every try, your body starts to understand that movement a bit better and better. So plenty of time, especially on a boulder like that where you can kind of move through the rest of the moves quickly. A lot of these boulders are actually like this. I think mainly just the slab boulder and probably the one in the roof. You kind of need at least 45 seconds to do them, maybe a minute. So kind of a nice situation to be in because you can be trying these boulders up until the end and really get the full use of your 5 minutes, which not necessarily always the best.
Brian Squire is so close on that toe hook edge. It was nice though. He does have the 5-point zone now because of his sneaky heel hook beta. So depending
Works
on
for points,
exactly,
not for tops. But hey,
we'll take it.
Yeah. I mean, like we've said a few times already, getting points in each of these rounds is really important because at the end of the day, it's your cumulative points that we're paying attention to, not so much the ranking. So as many points as you can get, the better off you'll be. Hugo Hoyer back up on men's number 2. That left leg just shaking as he presses with all his might on that small screw-on foothold, now in a much more comfortable position. Choosing to probably, he's going back and forth. It looked like he was going to hop that left leg up, but now he's in that palm, which kind of puts you in a tough position to get established on the volumes. Going to go back, going to go, he's up and down. It looked like he was going to then just pop with his hand, which we've seen some of the men try, but yeah, getting this foot up first seems to be the ideal way. Brian Squire figuring out that toe hook catch, now setting up for the top here. Just needs to decide if he wants to go right hand or left hand. Gonna go right, almost lost it there. Great save. Nice job for Brian Squire as Hugo is really getting himself into an interesting position there. That left foot barely hanging on and just gonna slip off for a second, but great climbing from Brian Squire right there. This jump proving to not be too difficult for most of the men getting through that opening section, but this press,
way harder than it looked.
Yeah, it's so interesting because when we looked at it, I was thinking, oh, that press doesn't seem so bad. I was more focused on the pressing on the red hold.
And the jump.
And yeah, that seemed really awkward and uncomfortable. But man, this first press is really getting the men.
And it's so hard to know until you're on the wall, especially when it's so three-dimensional like this, how a move is going to feel. But yeah, this press is proving to be very, very difficult. And we see Gavin there trying to make his way out to that 10-point zone. It is a little bit of a situation where you have to employ that fast slow that we saw at the top of this slab boulder that Hugo's on now, where you have to be in a comfortable position and use a little bit of momentum and speed to get into the next position. But a lot of that is controlled by your legs, which is an interesting practice in coordination and in balance and stability. And these athletes do a lot of work in that style of climbing on volumes, and I think just in their whatever cross training they're doing. And these two boulders, actually, this pink boulder that we just saw Gavin fall off at the end there and the slab are both two examples of that. But
so true.
We are going to be cutting to a commercial break, and we will see you back here in a minute.
You have to fail multiple times to find the right way. But once you find that right flow, and you're gonna be more successful.
Resilience is kind of understanding that like bad things will happen and that like you can turn those into opportunities to grow and become a stronger person.
When I was young, I was one of the only women in climbing. I was the kid at the gym climbing with all the older dudes. I think for me, it was sort of like a proving ground.
I've had those struggles too, that people have been upset that there's been a black person in their gym. And I'm resilient because I don't let it stop me.
Adversity teaches you to fail properly. And if you're not willing to accept failure, then you're never gonna learn to grow.
Bro, whatever you can throw at me, like, you're not gonna take me away from what I wanna do. You can't stop me.
And we are back in the men's semifinal boulder round at the 2023 National Team Trials. This is a quick look at our current standings. Adam Shahar holding strong at the top right now. Ben Hanna and Quino Francia trailing behind him, but those point differences are pretty big, and we've been talking about how the accumulative points are really important. Simon Hibbler just getting a top on men's number one.
That was a 30-second top, Megan. That's the fastest one we've seen.
And we've seen that boulder topped a lot. It's a little tricky start, but once they get up there, they can figure it out quickly. Simon very happy to start his round that way as Bob, Megan, Countryman.
These athletes,
eyes up the finish, takes a quick little thought away from where his foot placement was. That split second of paying too much attention to the finish caused a little slip there, but plenty of time left to try again.
I was going to say, with our shot of Simon Hibbler there, you can see how happy he was after his first top of the round. There's a replay of it. These athletes don't know where they are in the standings or where they are in the rankings at the time when they're climbing, but having a top like that in the first minute of your round is about as good as it gets. And so it was really cool to see Simon with that pumped up, psyched up attitude coming off of that first boulder.
And not just a top, but a flash. Our first look at someone actually deciding to change their shoes within this round. We talked about this a bit earlier. It's ideal to bring out a softer shoe and a stiffer shoe when you are in a round of boulders, especially on a wall that has multiple angle changes, because each shoe will serve you in a different way. So Luke having the foresight to make sure he's prepared, making good decisions and switching his shoe there. Bob Countryman getting back up on men's number one, just lost it at the finish last time, has to stay present in every foot placement and hand placement so he doesn't slip. These volumes, they're good to stand on, but they are slippery.
Like I said, Bob experiencing twice in a row there how unforgiving those can be. You can feel like you're in a comfortable position 1 second and the next be standing on the ground.
Yeah. And the more shoe rubber that gets built up on those volumes, the more slippery they become and the more you need to remember to brush. Luke nicely into that press, gets the foot up. Oh, looked like he wanted to get in that drop knee like we saw Ben Hanna in earlier, but kind of lost his balance there in the press on the left side. You know, I feel like Bob is kind of racing through this slab now. I think having Ben set up for the finish, he knows he can get back into that position, and the clock keeps winding down a bit more and more. And I think it's kind of putting the pressure on him to get back on the wall immediately, so he has another shot at getting to that finish in a much more stable position this time. See if he can make it happen. Ooh, just loses it. Decides to go with one hand, like we saw work earlier for Adam Shahar, but just a little quick. Really running out of time here. Charlie Barron just kind of overshooting that 10. We've talked about how you can't really see it from that left side. It's kind of blind to the athletes, so
Luke,
you
once
really
again,
have to be precise.
is making that first move look really easy. The press is really giving people trouble. Even for Luke here, he got his right foot up onto this blue hold before, but with the position of his shoulder was really struggling to do this match like he is now. Really, really impressive shoulder strength from Luke Meering as he inches his way out to that 10-point zone. That'll be it for the time for Luke Meering, but there is one more boulder left. Charlie Barron trying to make it happen to the 10-point zone.
Flare.
But like I said, Charlie is a gymnast, and that was a very impressive dismount. I think
Does he get extra points for that?
He doesn't. It would be nice, a little extra 5-point bonus. But speaking of points, there are your current boulder standings. Adam Shahar still holding it down in that first place position. Charlie Barron finishing his round off with a 39.5, followed closely by Luke Meering, who we just saw on boulder 3, and still has one more boulder left to go.
Ross Fulkerson taking his first look at men's number 1. You saw him moments ago in the secondary isolation, really deep in kind of a meditation. Ross is a very mindful athlete. I feel like he spent a lot of time focusing on the mental side of competition, not just the physical. So he's trying to get his mind right. I feel like you can see it in Ross. Even if you're in a red point round or something, there's like a switch in his mental where he's like, okay, it's game time. I'm focused, nothing else. I can't hear anything else. I feel like he probably doesn't hear anything while he's on the wall. He is that focused.
And Megan, as you were talking about before, he really focuses a lot on mobility. So although he is taller, I think he'll be able to figure out this toe hook jump catch, just miscalculating it a little bit maybe there on that first go. But he really does focus a lot on mobility, and there is a lot of that required in this round. So I'm excited to see how Ross does on the set of 4 boulders. Hugo Hoyer trying a different method, maybe going for a press with the left hand.
Ooh. Oh, good save. You know, it's always good to make sure you try different things in a round. Obviously, you don't want to try something different on every try, but there's that balance between not getting tunnel vision and only trying one thing and not just trying too much the whole time. So it's kind of like a fine line of making sure you're creative, but also commit to an actual beta. But this is honestly kind of starting to work out for Hugo, a different approach, but now he's getting in a better position, but not going to make it happen. Plenty of time to kind of suss it out, but also those press moves, they're far more taxing than you might assume as a viewer, but also as an athlete. Sometimes you don't even realize how taxing that movement is until you get back up there a second time. So making sure you have enough rest is so important, and I think something that comes with a lot of experience.
Absolutely, and Ross is experienced in this style of competition and at this level of competition. He's been on the national team. He knows what it's like to compete internationally. And so although there is a huge amount of pressure at this event, like you said, Ross is really good at getting in the zone, so to speak. And so I think he's just focused on this boulder and moving through the process. As we see Brian Squire now making his way up this slab boulder. He was almost at the top on his previous attempt, so he knows this section. He knows how to get through it. He did a really good job of reading this high foot sort of walk across that we've seen work really well for a lot of the other men. Got out to that 10-point zone on his previous attempt and just lost his footing a little bit. You can see him making sure he's calm, calculated, taking the time to chalk up this time. Really slow, precise movements.
Yeah, I think the end of this boulder, I think the most important thing is patience. We've noticed that anytime someone rushes it, and I don't necessarily think he rushed it there, I just think that was a little foot slip, but you really have to be as patient as possible. Ross trying to figure out this toe hook. I don't believe he's tried just to throw the toe yet, and as one of the taller athletes, that might be a good idea to just try it once with the toe only.
Yeah, we saw that work for Luke Meering, who is one of the taller guys.
Yeah.
But it seems a little bit counterintuitive to think of that.
It definitely does. And it also depends on if you feel comfortable in that position. Some people are so good at throwing toe catches. So it just really depends on how you feel. Nathan Sato trying to figure out how to push away from the wall here and have enough tension with the heel to get into the 10 zone. He's been into a lot of the zones on this during this round, but able to get one top as well, which was big.
Brian Squire losing one foot just a little bit, but able to recover. Really in
right
this
foot.
controlled perch position.
Going with the right hand seems really risky.
And I always talk about that's almost the worst amount of time to fall on a slab is 40 seconds. You have enough time to get back on the wall, but you're really going to have to rush it. And the one thing you don't want to be doing on a slab is rush.
Surprising, so true, and surprising that we still haven't seen Ross be able to get into this toe catch. This is going to be really frustrating for him during this round, having not topped that first boulder and knowing that it's been topped a lot. I mean, Simon Hibbler came out before him and was back in isolation in 30 seconds, so he knows that the boulder has been topped and can assume it's been topped by quite a lot of people, so he's going to have to let that go and just stay focused on the round. Ryan kind of running out of time and just not able to get around that volume, but great climbing from him during this round. As we see the next 4 men come out, a quick look at our standings. You see that Adam Shahar is still at the top. Bob Countryman a little down in the middle, a little surprising. Simon Hibbler with just that one top getting into this leaderboard with 25 points, perfect 25 points, a great way to start the round. And our first look at Xander Waller. Looks like he got a haircut from the other day, honestly.
I was going to say, maybe he that was his rest day activity yesterday.
Yeah.
Going to the barber shop.
I'm winning Texas?
I guess
don't know. Xander, another one of our taller competitors. So it'll be interesting to see if he does just throw the toe or simultaneously throw that toe and hand onto that 5 zone. Definitely a boulder I would assume he'd enjoy.
Yeah, Xander, it'll be interesting to see how this boulder goes. The first boulder, as he does that move so easily, this bodes well for Xander. The first boulder for him tends to be really indicative about how the rest of the round is going to go. If he is a little bit disappointed or frustrated on the first boulder, that usually carries with him through the rest of the round. So as this is his first attempt, he's going for his flash go towards the top of this boulder. This would really bode well for him for the rest of the round. Easily to the top. That might be the easiest we've seen so far get to the top of this boulder, and I think that really bodes well for Xander. Well, you can't tell. He does well when he starts off strong.
It's very true, and it looked like he barely had to put any effort into that. As we see Simon Hibbler on men's number 2, that perfect 25 from men's number 1. Actually, him and Xander did it both that boulder within like 30 seconds. So Bob really needing to get into the press here. Now, not getting the top on 3. It's not great for Bob, so he really needs to try to get some points here. He's going to want to go into that lead round with a little more points than he kind of has right now. I meant on men's number 2, he's on number 3 now.
He has his foot on the right, not quite on that blue hold, but just on the volume itself, and that'd be a little bit of a sketchy foot placement to do the rest of the boulder on, but that was really great from Simon Hibbler getting up high. We've seen getting up into that position prove to be quite challenging for some of the taller athletes, but Simon doesn't always climb like he's tall, so it's not shocking to me that he was able to figure out how to do that in a way that suited his height and his dimensions.
Really smooth movement into that 5 zone from Luke Muring. Not really, honestly, looking like he's floating. Needs to set up to get into the 10 here. Just see if he eyes it just a little short there. Plenty of time to adjust on that boulder. I feel like Luke's demeanor generally throughout the round, whether he's doing well or poorly in the round, he has a very calm demeanor, which I think serves him well, and especially in the sense that that's how he's able to come back from a bad round, is because he stays so calm and just is able to focus on the climbing and never really give up.
Yeah, and he's been doing great this bouldering round. He just, like you said, undershot that 10-point zone. That's a tactic that route setters employ to try to get people to boggle a little bit, is putting a hold around a corner so that the athletes can't necessarily see it when they're going for it. It's a little bit blind. You can see him lining up for this move once again. But I would assume that little 10-point white hold around the corner is actually quite hard to see from this position. You can see how close his face is into the wall. So he's probably honestly just trying to get a little lucky with
There
that
we go.
accuracy there, and he does. So that was a great adjustment from Luke, sort of learning from that boggle, learning from that, coming up a little bit short.
Yeah, really nice adjustments. Chooses to try to jump out of the toe hook like we've seen a lot of the men try. Honestly, unsuccessfully at this point, but if he can get his foot up, there's a good chance that he could make it happen. Bob still trying to figure out men's number 3, getting a little frustrated at this point as he takes another second to brush those holds. Again, one of the more powerful boulders within the round. It doesn't really let up. That's his score from boulder number 1 and boulder number 2. Disappointing drop of men's number 2. He knew he could do that boulder, and I think coming into number 3, he kind of has that weighing on him a bit.
Absolutely, and it's one thing for these athletes to have a disappointing performance on a boulder, but they really have to stay in the zone and treat each boulder like a new, like they're in a little bubble, I guess, on every boulder, and treat each boulder as it comes, because we've seen time and time again athletes not really find much success all the way until the last boulder, and then that last boulder proves to be the thing that really matters in the end. And we see Simon Hibbler employing a different tactic than everybody else, using his height to his advantage and finding a way to make that press down work like we've seen so many other athletes try.
And he does have a +6 wingspan, so he's got a lot of extra limbs on him, a lot of extra reach, and that's important at times if you can play to where your skill set lies. We saw that attempt kind of before earlier by Quinn. We're going with 2 hands to the finish, something you want to do when you're rushed for time, but not necessarily the most successful way to get through that boulder.
And with that, we have our next set of athletes out on the wall.
Sergey Lochno out for men's number 1, had a stellar lead round yesterday, getting to the exact same place as Sean Bailey on the lead route. So really came up in the standings. I do believe that his height is not 5'2", but we will get that fixed. He's actually 5'10", so one of those in the middle kind of heights. So has a lot of options really in this round specifically.
And he is so strong. You can see it in his shoulders as he's making his way up towards this boulder. He's doing a really good job of securing that 5 zone using that heel hook method, but as we've seen in previous time slots, it's great for securing that 5 zone on your first attempt, but that is about as far as people are getting with that heel hook method.
Yeah, kind of a strategy in a sense. A quick look at our standings. Adam Shahar still holding strong there. Simon Hibbler moving up a bit with those extra points from men's number 2. Hugo Hoyer right above Bob by just a couple attempts. Bob having 2 more falls than Hugo, as we see Hugo right here setting up to go for the top on men's number 4. Closest we've looked with that beta, or closest we've seen with that beta.
Absolutely. I'm interested to see if somebody else maybe will try the beta that Hugo just did and then correct for it and go left foot up like we saw with Adam, who is currently our only top on that boulder, or if leaving that toe or heel hook in and moving the right foot up will prove to be a successful method as well. We have Brian Squire now coming into that notorious press move.
That wrap ahead of time possibly helping, but actually I think kind of pulling him to the right a little more than he'd like.
One thing about those kinds of moves is you always want to use your toe to pull over and to get into that press position, but that foot is so bad and slopey and not very in-cut, so the only thing those athletes have to use to press is that right hand to push. We have Sergey now back to his heel hook method. I think he was going to try a more static foot walk all the way into that toe hook. I'm not sure if that's going to be a successful method for him, but time will tell.
Hugo quickly back into the 10, gonna set up for this final move again. I think it looks like he's planning on going the same way. It'll be, again, like you were saying, interesting to see if he will figure out that he could possibly cross through with that left foot. I think you mentioned it earlier, Allison, that toe hook is so secure, so it's hard to want to see anything else or even leave that hold. So I think that's why we haven't seen a lot of the men try that, actually. Brian taking some time to brush those start holds. This very powerful men's number 3 boulder with, it's so interesting. You have such a dynamic, powerful move followed by like a press where you have to also go through those powerful motions, but you need to be patient as well.
We just heard a power scream from Ross on a slab, which is That's a rarity.
I love it.
But he was really struggling to match that crimp, and as soon as he did, he was able to use that mobility that we were talking about and jump his left foot all the way out to that yellow volume. I think he maybe is going to struggle a little bit to get out of this splits, to move his right foot up one towards where his knee is onto that other yellow face of the volume. I think he's going to try to press and move his foot in. Incredible beta from Ross Fulkerson. That was a great way to solve this boulder. We haven't necessarily seen this method yet, but he's tenuously matching this little yellow crimp and eyeing up that in-cut 10 zone value. That hold is one of the smallest holds on the boulder, but it is actually one of the best. It really bites a lot. The athletes can really get their fingers behind it. You can see that in the zone mentality that Megan was talking about earlier.
What's really interesting too is not getting that top of number one puts him in a really precarious situation right now, just because a lot of men are getting a lot of points on that boulder. So he kind of really needs to do this one in order to not fall too far behind in terms of point values. Setting up nicely, and he's going to make it happen with another power scream. Really great climbing from Ross Fulkerson. I have a feeling he does kind of have a feeling that he needed that boulder. That look of relief kind of says it all as Sergey Lochno gets back up on men's number one. Looks like he's going to try to throw the toe this time. Just narrowly misses it, doesn't have it necessarily in the right position. A look of relief from Ross Fulkerson. His boulder score right now, 29.2. Puts him in a good spot. Now he hasn't fallen too far behind, whereas going into boulder number two, he was in a pretty precarious spot. But we're going to go to a quick break, and we'll be back with more of the men's semifinal round.
Travel doesn't have to be this super exotic international thing. It can really be out of your own backyard. The high desert is so three-dimensional, and it's so big that there is no way you could ever see everything here. The orange and brown and yellow, it's just so endless. Whether it's something I've done before or something brand new, there's so much to explore just right here.
So yeah, we've been testing out the new catch and hold system from the TruBlue IQ Plus. And with the IQ Plus, you know, you're just able to stop there, rest, shake out, try to figure out the moves, and yeah, really excited to have this new device in our gym. It's going to just really help us to continue growing the sport.
Since 1966, we have viewed walls not as obstacles, but as opportunities. From the big walls of Yosemite to the high peaks of the Himalaya, we were searching for a personal kind of freedom. In this pursuit, we found a community, strengthened by different stories, experiences, and perspectives. This community has shown us that the only way forward is together.
Welcome back to the 2023 USA Climbing Team Trials. We are in the thick of our men's semifinal boulder round, and up now on men's boulder number one, we have Nathaniel Coleman. Nathaniel is the 2020 Tokyo Olympic silver medalist in the old combined format, so it is really interesting to see how he will do here today in the new combined format for the 2024 Paris Olympics. A quick look at our current boulder standings, with Adam Shahar still holding on in that number one spot. Hugo Hoyer closely followed behind with the top on men's number 4, and Ben Hanna shortly behind him. Nathaniel struggling to make contact with that toe hook, but I'm sure you can see him doing a little bit of learning there on the mats. This is a big day for these athletes. There's a lot of climbing to come still for the ones that do make that final round, that top 8 in this semifinal round. They climb again tonight with another set of 4 boulders. It's a lot of climbing. Huge demand.
One of the biggest demands ever. Actually, I always was thinking, oh, the old combined was so much more climbing, but I actually think this is a lot more climbing than the old combined. Simon Hibbler just trying his hardest and finally taking a second to breathe. I think he started to turn purple there a little bit. He's kind of concerned about his oxygen intake for a second. We've seen this position before from Adam Shahar earlier. Did not see him successfully get out of it, but maybe Simon will find a way as Nathaniel does figure out how to get into the middle section of this boulder. And from here, we haven't seen people struggle too much. It's kind of pretty obvious, and getting into the positions isn't so difficult for them. So he should be able to make it happen. Nice effort from Simon there. He almost was able to hold on to that 10. So Nathaniel will get the 10 here on men's number 1, which the most top boulders so far of this round. So very important to get a top here.
He's doing it with ease. Megan, this is a big competition for everybody, but this is an even bigger competition for Nathaniel Coleman. He struggled with a few finger injuries last season, so he doesn't have any points from the bouldering or lead World Cups in the previous season. And he also didn't do as well as he thought he was going, or not as thought he's going to. Nobody ever knows what's going to happen, but he did not get as many points as he would have liked at Nationals because of another finger injury. There we have Bob Dylan making a top of that 4th boulder. He needed that one.
He definitely did need that one. I think coming into that lead round with a lot of points, I feel like lead for him, sometimes he does really well on the route, sometimes he has little mistakes, so good to come into the next round with a lot of points. Another look at Nathaniel Coleman, who, by the way, brought out many pairs of shoes, sign of a seasoned competitor, and like you were saying, not doing as well at Nationals as he had hoped, narrowly missing the final in both boulder and lead, so coming out here and being out to a good start for Nathaniel is really important, and he has a title to defend. Silver medalist at the Olympics. I think he wants to be able to get back there again. So this is a very important competition for him. Not a lot of time left on the clock here for Xander, but I do think as far as slab climbs go, you can kind of move through this one quickly if you choose to be very confident with all of your beta. So not down and out yet, but we have seen people who rush that final move to the finish kind of drop it. So we'll have to see if he can stay patient enough. He does already have a great score right now, this just being his 2nd boulder and already at 30 points. So not going to make it happen on this one, but 2 more boulders to come. And I do think 2 boulders that suit him quite well, honestly.
Yeah, that was good thinking for Xander. I don't think he had gotten that 10-point zone yet, so I think he was even just gunning for that. So it was not a bad idea for him to jump on the wall at the last minute. But next up we have Zach Galla out on the wall, out on his number 1 boulder, already cooling the fingertips down with his fan.
The irony here being that he grew up in Georgia, so, but once you leave, your skin does acclimate to wherever you're staying. But he is from a humid climate as well, which may be more reason to be right on the fan right away.
I'm always really stoked to see Zach Galla at a competition. He's a really cool climber to watch, very, very strong, and his style climbs to reflect that.
Oh, yeah. It's interesting because looking at all these overhanging boulders, my first thought is, oh, Zach's going to love these. He does have so much power, so much strength. And over the years, I think he's spent a lot of time really trying to fine-tune his technique and his footwork and kind of focus on those areas a bit more because as far as power goes, I don't think he really needs any more.
We have Ross Fulkerson eyeing up men's number 3. Megan, men's number 3 has been interesting. We saw our first competitor, Quinn Francia, boggle the finish, run out of time, not be able to match the finish hold on this 3rd boulder, and we haven't really seen any other athlete get up there again.
I'm not going to lie, I kind of love when rounds happen that way. I love when the first competitor comes out and does well on all the boulders, and then everyone kind of thinks, oh, is everybody going to do really well on all the boulders? And then there's kind of a lull on where people start to get on things. So I think it keeps it exciting. It creates a roller coaster of emotion. So I'm sure at some point we will see men start to get high up on that boulder again. But I like to keep it interesting.
Absolutely, and
whoa,
keeping it interesting here on the slab. Sergey moving his way into the meat and potatoes of this boulder onto the 5-point zone there.
That was such a good save. The tension in the feet and the lower back, your abs, so much needed in order to stay on that boulder. Nicely into this middle section. We've seen a lot of the shorter climbers not struggle as much. He's about 5'10", so in that range where it fits him a little bit better. Ross Fulkerson getting into the middle part of the boulder. Probably going to choose to stay facing, struggling to get into that press here. it's interesting because in this press you want to kind of move your hips out left like he's trying to do, but that foothold is so bad, so many of the men are kind of struggling to get into that press as they're trying to not slip off that bad volume. If there was just like a screw-on or a spike would be even better for a foot, they wouldn't have as much trouble rocking over, but because that volume has nothing to really pull down on, they're just pressing, and then in pressing, trying not to slip, it makes it kind of difficult.
Gala,
surprising.
Yeah. He hasn't connected on this move yet. Seems like something that's right up his alley.
I have found with him that sometimes when I think something is great for him,
you're wrong.
It's not even that I'm wrong. I just feel like some days, like, it just doesn't happen, but then other days it does. I feel like he is still trying to find that consistency within rounds sometimes.
Yeah.
So it's hard to predict.
Brian Squire very quickly back up into the top move of this pink boulder, just to Ross's right shoulder and losing it a little bit. Ross really eyeing down that press, trying to figure out what he's going to do next.
There's Zach now up into a different beta, trying to figure out if he can go through the left side, but really we've learned that it's just good to get the 5 there, but you kind of get stuck. It would be kind of surprising if anyone got out of that position, but like we've said a few times, it's always good to try different betas because you don't want to not try something and then maybe that be the thing that unlocks it. Ross really letting the clock run down on his next attempt here.
You know, he knows he also has an entire other boulder left, so that was really smart from him to decide to rest and give this press one more really good try, but not to burn too much, trying over and over again.
He's very intentional with his attempts. That's one thing I've noticed about him over the years. And with a day like today, where if you're into the final tonight, you have so much climbing to do throughout this day, so being intentional not only for your endurance physically but also for your skin conservation, I think it's really smart and important. Brian just dropping the top there. He's so close on multiple attempts, has to be very frustrated. Visibly he is frustrated, but hopefully he realizes he did everything he could out there to try and make it happen. Ross Fulkerson also not going to make it happen there. Not even seeing Ross on the leaderboard yet, so he's really going to need to make something happen later. Brian Squire trailing behind Quino Francia, our first athlete that was out. Adam Shahar still holding strong in that #1 spot. A good amount of points above Hugo Hoyer, but then Hugo, Ben, and Bob all within just falls of each other. So interesting scores so far. I honestly think they're a little closer than what we were seeing in the semifinal round for the women yesterday, so exciting and means that anything can happen during the lead round. And this is just the top 10. There are more people below, but we are just referencing the top 10 right now as Ellis Ernsberger comes out and takes a look at men's #1.
And what that means, Megan, with the scores being so close is just that even if these athletes maybe didn't have their best bouldering round ever and are lower down on that leaderboard, they do have an opportunity to really get it back if they can stay composed and understand that the lead route is going to become really important later on this morning, and that they can make up that ground. The standings in this round don't necessarily matter as much as that overall points that we've been talking about. So a lot to play for left this morning and tonight.
Yeah, it's really exciting, and the fact that we won't know until the later rounds keeps it even more exciting. Xander taking an interesting approach on this press here. A little bobble, but luckily from this angle that hold is good, so he was able to save himself and not come off the wall yet. Really trying to make sure every attempt counts. Just struggling to get in that press. You know, another boulder where being a little taller here is not necessarily great. It's a pretty small box to try to fit in. We saw some of the 5'9", 5'10" athletes kind of get into that position a little more comfortably. Simon looking like he wants to figure out how to bring the left foot up, but going to go with the right foot first. Not a bad attempt, pretty close. The question is, will he try something else, or will he feel like that's what you need to do because he was so close on that attempt? This whole competition is so important to Nathaniel Coleman. Normally he would be coming into the overall standings here with a lot of World Cup results as well, but all he has right now is the Nationals results due to some of those injuries Allison you were referencing earlier. Wasn't able to compete on the circuit last year and didn't have the worst, but didn't have his best Nationals performance. Pretty odd to not see him in at least one of the finals, and he narrowly missed both of them. So he really does need to come out high in the results here, and making finals is kind of a necessity if he wants to make the team and be able to compete in the World Cups. And that's something he's been doing for the last 5 years or so. So it would be pretty devastating if he didn't get that opportunity.
Yeah, absolutely. We see here Xander Waller trying to make something stick on that left foot. Again, that volume is very poor, sloping downwards in an overhang. Trying to use, we've seen a couple athletes try to use a little bit of momentum to get up higher on top of that foot. Maybe somebody will make that beta work. I think we'll see as we move forward here.
Ellis getting another look at men's number 1. Ellis definitely one of the athletes where lead is more of his specialty. Good at bouldering, but not necessarily needing to get all the points in this round. Obviously, he wants to go into the lead round with a lot of points if he can, but if he's under 50 or around 50, it's not going to be as devastating for him because he really excels at lead and is now nicely into this middle section of the boulder. So already getting off to a great start to kind of achieve those points for the round. Simon Hibbler finding the left foot here. This should make it happen for him. Still has to get 2 hands. Got to get that foot up. And he's going to make it happen. A great round for Simon Hibbler. He'll be happy to end the round that way.
An amazing round for him. I think he is definitely more of a boulderer. That is the round he needed to have today. And it's so nice when you can connect and make it work. And it's great for that to have happened for Simon Hibbler. And for Ellis to have topped the first boulder, being a lead specialist is also a really big deal.
It's huge. A lot of big things happening right here as Xander Waller's trying to figure out something else he could do in order to get through this boulder that's been stumping so many of the men. We really haven't seen them get too far since Quino Francia. So
Nathaniel Coleman back up on this slab. You can hear his mom and dad cheering for him there in the audience as he works his way up through this slab.
Oh, don't think he has gotten the 10, and he's not going to get it on that attempt. So he's walking away from this boulder with just the 5. So not the best, but he did top the first boulder, and there are 2 more boulders to come, so he doesn't need to be too worried yet, but he definitely needs to make something happen. As you can see within our top 10, Xander Waller moving into the 35 spot with his points from boulder number 3. Adam Shahar still holding strong, and Simon Hibbler moving up ahead of Hugo Hoyer with a 69.6, putting him in a very comfortable spot right now as Jesse Grouper comes out to men's number 1, his first look here, and sporting that knee brace, dealing with some minor knee issues. Actually, I think it's so cool that at the TC they've been kind of adapting things for him so that he could still train for this competition and not injure himself by setting up an auto belay off of a crane, so he didn't have to worry about, you know, taking falls before he was ready. And he definitely climbed a little hesitant within the bouldering round in the qualification due to trying to make sure he was not going to hurt himself and kind of testing things.
And one thing that I was talking about with the head coach of the U.S. national team, Josh Larson, is we see Jesse being the only one to figure out how to solve this boulder without doing the jump method.
Wow.
If anybody was going to do it,
it was going to be Jesse. I was going to say, as soon as he got into that position, I was like, oh man, I think he might actually be long enough to kick over there after, because that is quite spread out. And you know, Jesse is really good at doing what is intuitive to him. And again, it makes more sense for him to go through this boulder in a more stable position, given the fact that he doesn't want to put himself in a precarious position with his knee. So little slip there at the top. First time we've really seen that, honestly. Maybe not the first, but we don't see that as often on that part of the boulder, but perhaps getting into it in that way put him out of position just a little bit, but I think he'll be able to make it back up there.
And what I was saying, I was talking to the U.S. national team coach, Josh Larson, about Jesse and about his bouldering round. That injury actually, I think, has helped him have a better mindset when it comes to bouldering, just because he wasn't sure if he was actually going to be able to be here and going to be able to boulder still. And so he's just really happy and excited to be here. And mentally, I think we saw more fire from Jesse Grouper in the bouldering round than we've seen yet from him in his entire career. So he is more of a lead climber, as we've said, as we've seen him static his way through that that section. But this is a combined format. He does need to be able to do both. And he's been doing a really great job of training it both physically and mentally. And we're seeing that pay off here at this competition.
I was actually going to say that I honestly thought that was one of the best rounds of boulder that I have seen him in. Quick look at Annie Sanders, the national team trials champion, and one of the women that has made the national team and will be competing on the World Cup circuit starting in April.
Yeah, she's repping that USA gear already.
Yep, as she should. Sergey Lochno getting ready to get back on men's number 3. He was kind of caught up in that face-out position that we've seen a few of the men try earlier. Doesn't seem promising that way. It seems like facing in, looking at the wall is probably the better way to go about it. Let's see if Jesse chooses to go with that static method again. Looks like he's going to. I do think it's a good idea for him. It did not look like it was too difficult. I mean, literally, he is just tall enough to do this beta. You see he's using every inch that he has. Just needs to get into a higher hip position this time. I think he was a little low last time, so he lost the hold a bit, but should be able to make that adjustment here. Sergey now facing in, looking like he is in a better position. Doesn't really like that press, though. I don't think anyone does. I don't think we've seen anyone look comfortable there all day.
Jesse is really taking his time and trying to figure out what foot position is going to work best for him. He's really showing off his endurance, his lead climbing skills here, being really patient with this foot placement, but he is going to have to commit to a certain foot sequence here to get to the top of this boulder. I think that little bit of hesitation maybe drained his power a little bit, made it hard for him to get all the way over, his hips over his feet into the right position. See Zach Galla struggling on this slab after struggling on the first boulder as well. These men obviously don't know what the standings are. We have the luxury of sitting behind our screens and can have them in front of us. Which, speaking of which, if you do want to follow along with the results, you can go to the USA Climbing website, go to the results tab, and it'll have the full breakdown of the boulders for you. But yeah, these men don't know them, so when they go behind that wall and go to their resting zone, there's no screen telling them how they're doing. So for the men that are having a little bit of a rougher start, like Zach Galla, there is room to make it up. The scores are really close together. That lead route is really going to matter. Obviously, Zach Galla is doing a really great job here of getting in some last-minute points with 7 seconds left on the clock. But
he might have enough time to finish it. And, you know, Zach, a boulder specialist, and that is where he shows that he is a boulder specialist. We've seen man after man try to rush through that move and not be able to make it happen. And with a second left on the clock, Zach Galla gets a top on men's number 2. Really important for him in the round because he wants to ideally walk out of this round in kind of that 75, 80, 85 point range at least, if not, you know, up in the 90s if he can.
Gotta love a buzzer beater. That's what keeps us sports fans engaged here.
So calm too. He was so calm about it. Our first look at Sean Bailey in this round, coming out onto men's number 1. Now, we've been talking a little bit more about some of these athletes being more boulder specialists or lead specialists, but when you talk about Sean Bailey, he's pretty much equally good at both of them.
Yeah, you can't count him out in either discipline. He's a really talented, really composed athlete in both the boulder and the lead, having won World Cups in both disciplines. Yeah, he is definitely one to watch for the Olympics in Paris 2024. He has been one to watch for a long time, and yeah, I'm really excited to see what he can do here today.
Just misses that toe hook there. Now, he is the number 1 seed coming in to this competition, or this round of competition. I feel like when you watch Sean, he never really looks phased. Misses the toe hook there, but not really phased by the fact that that happened. He kind of is going through his head about the adjustments he needs to make, and then he'll generally get back on and execute the way he needs to. Nathaniel quickly into the 5 zone here, trying to get into that press. Ooh, not a bad idea using the volume there. He did go back to the hold, but I kind of looked like it might be a good idea.
These boys train together a lot. They also climb outside together a lot. I think they really push each other, and they also support each other, sort of following whatever their motivation is, whether it's trying the next hard lead route outside or the next hard boulder or whatever they're doing. And that motivation, that fire, that really shows in competition as well. And it's really cool when these men can push each other and be able to be competitors but also be supporters of one another.
Yeah, I 100% agree. Quick look at the top there from Xander Waller. Definitely a boulder I expected him to be able to figure out, kind of one that I think suits him pretty well. A great way to end his round. Always ending with the top is ideal, and it should put him in a pretty good spot. Should bump him up a bit. Sean Bailey's still kind of struggling with this. I mean, we did see Zach Gala as well kind of struggle with that opening move. And Zach and Sean are, I believe, the shortest competitors within this round. Around the 5'5", 5'6" height, so possibly pushing 5'7", so a lot shorter than the other men. So
with that miss from Sean Bailey, you can sort of see that with his height and the distance that he has, he does have to be a lot more powerful and a lot more accurate with that move.
Yeah.
Just because a little bit of a boggle makes it so that he doesn't quite get the distance that he needs in order to engage that toe hook.
Yeah, for a lot of the other men, they're more so worried about accuracy, but he has to worry about the height and the accuracy on top of that. Ellis Ernsberger trying to get into a more comfortable position here on men's number 2, bringing that chalk bag along. I don't know about you, Allison, but I always felt like, especially on a slab, I wanted to bring my chalk bag with me. But honestly, in a boulder round, generally, I would wear a chalk bag just because you'd rather be safe than sorry. A lot of the men you'll see, too, if there's jumps, like moments ago, actually, Sean took his off. But they'll kind of bring it on and off depending on the boulder.
See Nathaniel Coleman having a bit of a chill moment. The boulder that he's on, men's number 3, demands so much from these athletes. Just trying to compose himself and rest as much as he can with that clock ticking down.
So Ellis really setting himself up nicely so far, already topping 2 boulders, so should be around the 49-point range, and he is a lead specialist. So already kind of off to a round that's better than a lot of the men that actually are more boulder specialists. So putting himself in a great spot to make it into the final later.
Nathaniel going for that volume press again and turning around like we saw with Simon Hibbler, but these taller guys that are facing out are getting a little bit stuck once they get to this part that Nathaniel's in. We'll see if he can whip up some different beta to try to get under this big red circle here.
It does look like he's getting himself set up nicely. I mean, kind of the nicest we've seen so far, even though this does seem like the awkward beta, but it looks like he might be able to make it happen, but it's just that swing there is a little too much to hold. Sean Bailey able to get the 5 zone, but not able to get anywhere farther. But we are going to go to a quick commercial break, and then we'll be back with more of the men's semifinal in the boulder round.
Whether you're alpine climbing or cragging after work, Gnarly Nutrition is here to help you push your possible.
Welcome back to the men's semifinal round at the 2023 National Team Trials. A quick look at that leaderboard. Adam Shahar still holding strong with that 78.7. Simon Hibbler right behind him. Bob Countryman a few spots down. This is just our top 10 right now. Still men to climb, as you see on the wall right now. Jesse Grouper, but a few familiar names in the current standings. I feel like the lead round is going to be very interesting today. Anything could happen. Jesse making quick work right now of men's number 2, looking pretty comfortable on this boulder. Definitely one of the boulders I thought he might like better. We'll see how he works through this section. A lot of the taller climbers have been going palm first to this volume, but then it not really working out. But Jesse likes to do things in an interesting way a lot of the time, so I can never really predict what is going to work for him, and he does have a lot of mobility and flexibility, and that's what we're seeing right now on this boulder. From the previous boulder, just a score of 9.9, so he did not get a top there, so doing well on this boulder is important for him.
And Jesse is a lead specialist, so he doesn't need to win this round. He doesn't need to even necessarily be in the top of this round, but getting all the points he can, as we can see him here, securing the 10 zone is important and does set him up better for lead and does give him some wiggle room on the lead route, which every point counts, every zone counts, every top counts, and Jesse is doing a really great job in this round of collecting those points, only on his second boulder, but doing a really good job of securing the 10 zone here.
That being said, Ellis Ernsberger is a lead specialist, so the fact that he's already topped 2 boulders and in that 40-something point area puts more pressure on Jesse going in if he doesn't gain enough points here, because then he might not have as much control in lead. But putting a lot of points on the board here with a top there, and very relieved and pleased, Jesse Grouper is starting to set himself up even better within this round.
Megan, this slab is proving to be interesting. We've had an interesting combination of people being able to find a top relatively easily. You can see Jesse walking by Zach Galla. Zach also found a top, but struggled a lot more than we saw with Jesse here. And the athletes that are able to stay patient and sometimes get a little lucky with the foot slips maybe, but I don't really know. This slab is interesting. It's confounding some people
dicey,
and other people.
Right? It's kind of like it's doable, but you might not do it still, right? So I wouldn't say it's the hardest or the easiest boulder in the round. I feel like because it's kind of low percentage in the way that you could know exactly what to do and feel like you're executing and then still not do the boulder. We saw that with Bob. We saw that with a few other people earlier. Just these little foot slips keep you from actually executing. So it ends up being this boulder that anything can really happen.
I also really think it's about ankle flexibility. It's
oh
like
my
one
gosh,
of those slabs
huge.
that has those really bad volumes, and if these men have really good ankle flexibility, those volumes end up feeling like really good holds.
If Colin Duffy were here, he would love it. I don't think I've ever seen anyone with more flexible ankles in my life.
Once again, if you're missing Colin Duffy, we all are, but he is not at this competition. He had an amazing international season last year, is in the top 10 of the world ranking for both boulder and lead, and thus is automatically already on the U.S. team. So he will not be here today, but we look forward to seeing him on the circuit this season.
And that's a good thing to note, because you have to be in the top 10 in both boulder and lead, and that's why we're seeing some of the athletes here today, because even if they are in boulder or lead, they still have to compete so they can get on the boulder and lead team. With that combined format now, it changes everything.
Yeah, and so we see Jesse Grouper, obviously we just saw him top the slab. He is here. He is well into the top 10 in the world ranking in the lead discipline only. So he does have to come to this competition. He does have to make the combined team in order to be able to participate at boulder events this year in order to have a combined score to try to make it to the Olympics. So those athletes that are not in attendance, Brooke Rabitou and Natalia Grossman yesterday and Colin Duffy today, are in the top 10 world ranking in both the boulder and lead discipline.
Quick look at that leaderboard. Ellis Ernsberger moving up into this top 10 zone, or top 10 area, with his top on men's number 2. He just came out for men's number 3, so he has a lot of boulders to do still, and he's already within the top 10, so that's pretty big for him. And again, Adam Shahar, Simon Hibbler at the top of your leaderboard right now, with Hugo Hoyer, Ben Hanna, and Bob Countryman so close to each other, so watching them in lead will be really important.
Adam Shahar is sort of exploding onto this semifinal round
which is exciting. We saw a lot of new faces in the final in the women's round. So the fact that we're already seeing someone, not a new face, but he hasn't made an elite final. So if he did, it would be really cool to see that be his first final here tonight. So that's interesting.
Nathaniel Coleman is on his final boulder here, and as we just saw in the standings, he is not yet in the top 10, so he really does need this top of this boulder. It is well in his wheelhouse.
It's a Nathaniel boulder, I would say. I mean, I don't want to say anything I shouldn't, but watching his climbing for years, it does seem like something that he should excel at and should be able to be successful. And look at him just like arching backwards to see if he can see that 10 zone. It is blind to them. Oh my goodness.
Almost holding it, but that is, as we were talking about with Luke Merring earlier, it's hard to see that hold. It's around a corner. You can't really tell. You can sort of get a little bit of muscle memory learning from a fall like that and be able to correct for it and make small minor adjustments. So hopefully he's able to do that on his next attempt. Sean Bailey working his way into this slab.
I would
through the shoulders.
assume that he's going to feel a little better on the slab here than he did on that first boulder. It's unfortunate that he was kind of low on that jump. So he knows that he has to make up for it here because, again, a lot of the men, when they're sitting in that secondary ISO, they're seeing the other men come back so quickly from that first boulder. So he knows that he really needs to get something done here. Nathaniel back into that position. We saw him before. Now, that number 10 placard, you can kind of line it up with the corner there, and you see he kind of did it better that time. That's one of those moves where when you don't hit it on your first attempt, you kind of look around and then you see if you can create that line with the volume. Easy to the top, just needs 2 hands, and then he'll get that top. Doing exactly what he needed to do on this boulder. This should push him up a bit higher. We'll see what happens there, but we should see him in the current standings soon.
That was a really good read from him. Immediately crossed the foot over to do that last move in the most efficient way possible. We also saw Sean Bailey on the right side of your screen just narrowly missing that top hold of the slab. He does have plenty of time to get back up there again, but it's always a little bit demoralizing, heartbreaking when you get that close to the top and you're not able to quite connect.
You just saw a flash of Nathaniel's score from this round, 59.6. So we mentioned earlier, you kind of want to be at least in the 50 or above the 50 going into the lead. And lead is something Nathaniel's worked a lot on in the past few years. So he's in a more comfortable position than he would have been, say, 5 years ago going into the lead round. But he still really needed to make sure he got that boulder done. Ellis just working his way through this number 3 boulder that we've seen a lot of the men struggle with. Really smart adjustment there. He needs to just bump that right hand up to make a little space for his foot, but we haven't seen anyone facing forward in a while and looking that comfortable, so I think he can make it happen. Sean really needing to make something happen here. Does have a little under a minute left on the clock. That 13.9 is not great going into the lead. Now, he is a phenomenal lead climber, so, you know, doesn't need to worry too much, but if you can go into that lead round with more cushion, the better off you are. I remember talking to Annie last night. She mentioned that she felt really good going into lead because she had such a good boulder score during the final. Having almost a perfect score gave her the ability to kind of relax on the route, and that's kind of what you want moving into the lead round. So if Sean can get more points here, he'll be in a much better position.
And Sean is our final competitor of the morning. So with that, we are finished with the first and second boulder of this round. Only the third and fourth left to play for. Hopefully Sean's able to rest up, reset, and come out prepared for that tricky press on the third boulder.
I could see him figuring that press out, though. A quick look at our standings. Adam Shahar is still standing or holding strong at number 1. You see Nathaniel Coleman has bumped up to 7th place right now, 59.6, just behind Xander Waller. Their score is very close. Also, Ross Fulkerson not so far behind. So really exciting standings currently. It's going to make the lead round so interesting. I feel like it was not this close during the qualification round, so it's going to be an exciting show later today as Zach Galla gets ready to go on his final boulder of the round, and Jesse Grouper on men's number 3, both of them just taking some time to brush. Remember, these athletes, when they come out in the semifinal round, They're in reverse order from how they finished from the qualification round. So your top finishers of qualification coming out in the later spots. Different from the qualification round where we let the higher ranked people come first. The idea is you have more people in a qualification round. You want those higher ranked athletes on the holds earlier. But when in a round of 20, the holds don't get as grimy as they would in a qualification round. So not as big of a deal. Zach quickly up on men's number 4 as Jesse kind of falls off of that first jump on men's number 3. Zach choosing to just slowly go into that campus. He has some crazy power and strength, just like raw strength, can kind of one-arm anything. So didn't need to do as much as some of the men. Just has to find this heel position and see if he can nail that 10 zone on his first try.
You can see him just slowly easing his way onto this volume into a no-hands position. That hold is a little bit far, so he's going to have to pop a little.
I was going to say flip a toe might be a good idea. A little awkward, though.
Yeah, I wonder what corrections he's going to make for that next time. If he'll just try to extend a little bit, come up onto his right foot in a little bit of a tippy-toe fashion, or if he'll try to switch that left foot to a toe hook as well. Jesse Grouper up into this press that has really thwarted everybody but Quinn O'Francia so far.
Yeah, I mean, I felt like Ellis looked really good but wasn't able to make it happen. Quinn must feel great after his round. Really looking good on all those boulders, and he is still in that top 10, so in a good spot for himself.
Sometimes it's a little bit bittersweet when you are the only one to solve a move like that, but then obviously he ran out of time and wasn't able to actually top the boulder, so yeah,
bittersweet's a great word.
Yeah, it's great to be the only one to be able to solve things. That always feels good. It's a little bit of an ego boost, but to not have that full 25 point is always a little sad.
It's true, but he did get the 10 at least. Oh, wow. Inches away from that. There we go. Just with the 3 at first.
That was a really great shot watching Zach's fingers just creep towards that 10-point zone.
I do think he's going to want to bring that left foot up. Does it immediately. This should set him up nicely. Nice press immediately to create that opposition, and a good top there for Zach Galla.
Honestly, I think it's a little bit more intuitive to bring the left foot up for those shorter athletes, because the thought of keeping that toe hook or heel hook there just makes no sense.
He was like, I am already fully stretched out. That doesn't make sense. Really great round there for Zach Galla. Slow start to the round, so honestly a great finish. Jesse Grouper, men's number 3, cannot figure out a way around the jump on this one. You are definitely forced to jump on this one. I don't think you can do it a static way. Nicely into that jump. We'll see if he can find a comfortable position in the press. Haven't seen that happen. Like you were mentioning, Alice.
I'll answer
like you were mentioning Allison earlier. Quinn O'Francia looked the most comfortable, but we haven't seen people there so much lately. That was interesting. I haven't seen people look at that upper volume as a way to get over at all.
Yeah, I feel like Ross Fulkerson moved up the right, like Jesse actually is thinking about. Pressed up a little bit, tried to grab that right side of this volume. Honestly, some of these athletes looked really close. It looked like maybe they needed another minute and a half or something to solve this section and figure it out. But Jesse going with this method that Hugo Hoyer tried as well earlier, ending up just sort of backwards.
That method's interesting, though, because it's a lot of extra work to get into the same position everyone else is ending up in anyway. Look at Zach Galla's score, 58.9. On that upper side of the 50 points, so a good place to go into the lead route. The men did not have a top in the lead route in qualification, so I would assume that the lead route would be pretty difficult again today. So maybe not as big of a deal being in the 50s coming into lead. I think for the women, the routes were a little more toppable, so those higher scores from bouldering were very, very necessary. A quick look at those standings. Adam Shahar still at the top of your leaderboard right now. These are the top 10 currently. Zach Ella now in that top 10 after his round.
With the exception of Adam Shahar being 10 points almost above Simon Hibbler.
Everyone else
look at how close those scores are.
It's so close. It's honestly making me stressed for later. I feel like it's going to be a very intense lead round just with how close they are. I think For the women, they were much more spread out, so you kind of knew what you needed to do depending on how you did in the boulder round. So there was just more wiggle room. I feel like there is no wiggle room. It's basically like that lead discipline will be as if it was before, like not in combined. Like they're going to have to look at it that way because their scores are all so close. And they can't relax at all.
Even for Adam Shahar, 10 points even still is not that many points. You know, Annie Sanders last night, our team trials women's national champion, our team trials champion. She
national
was like
team trials champion.
Sure, yeah, that. She was like 30 points ahead of the next person yesterday. So
she had lots of room.
So Adam Shahar with 10 is really great, but even that is still narrow margins, and the rest of that top 10 is even closer. We have Ellis Ernsberger into that standing position, wiggling that left heel in there, trying to put himself in as stable of a position as he can before he leaves that left hand.
Sean missing the jump earlier, so nice to see him in here. Now, I feel like he should be able to get in more of a comfortable position on this press. The box shouldn't feel so small for him. I feel like he's almost there. Getting up on it is kind of hard. It's so much tricep. I do feel like I've seen him look at his hands more than any of the other men during this round specifically.
And Sean is no stranger to this style of climbing. He spent a lot of time in Japan in the last year on competition-style boulders, on the really creative setting that they have in all the big gyms in Japan. So he's no stranger to being uncomfortable on a competition-style boulder, and I'm curious to see what little tweaks he's going to make to his beta on his next go here.
And he does really need to get some more points on the board here. Ellis in a more stable position now, slowly inching into that 10 high zone. Ooh, looks like he's going to maybe set up for the jump. Wow. I think after that attempt, he might readjust, and if he does see it, try to cross that left foot through. I think that would be ideal because he was pretty far away from the jump. Also, he was so deep in the heel that he came from such a lower position. It was kind of hard to get high enough with that momentum.
Sean Bailey lining up this jump once again, swinging out, kicking that foot back onto the left volume, really wiggling his left foot onto that slopey volume, trying to get the most purchase he can, getting into the shoulder well this time, easing his way up, trying to get those screw-ons on the inside of the red hold there, twisting his shoulder. He's going to need to get a right foot up to get into a more stable position.
Ooh, looks
going
like
for a toe hook.
If he brings his right foot up, he's definitely going to need to make a little more room. I feel like his right hand's a little too low. Kind of in such an awkward spot right now. Almost looked like he was going to use a knee. Wow, that flexibility and mobility there. Yes, it does seem like you don't want to drop me here. It sets you up better to get to the 10. We haven't seen anyone get here since Quinn Francia, the first person out. Now, this is big for Sean Bailey. Hasn't had the best round so far, so really needs to get a top here.
And Quinn only had about 10 seconds left on the clock, so plenty of time for Sean Bailey to have a little bit more patience at the top, really figure out this section. Looking good. And
Two hands, and there's that top. Really good for Sean Bailey. Also, now we have seen every boulder in the round topped, waiting till the very end. Sigh of relief there from Sean Bailey as he walks back to secondary isolation. Ellis back up in that position he was in before. No real adjustment there. Maybe a little bit of a turn of that left foot, but
Megan, it doesn't get much better than the very first athlete out getting the high point and then it
honestly,
not being
it's like a storybook ending. I feel like we never get to see that. The route setters must be very pleased with that round. You saw as Sean was walking away, he definitely had a few words with them on the way out. Ellis Ernsberger is going to finish his round with a score of 64.4. Really great as a speed specialist coming out of the boulder round that high. Speed specialist. As a lead specialist coming out. Sean Bailey is such a veteran of these competitions. He never really looks too stressed. Definitely gets a little frustrated, but is able to keep it calm enough to pull it out in the end. Able to get a top on men's number 3, the first top we've seen today. And going into that final boulder, it'll put him in a good position. Another look at our current standings. Adam Shahar still holding strong, 78.7. And just check out the rest of those numbers. They are all so close. Simon Hibbler, Hugo Hoyer in those second and third spots right now. We've got Nathaniel Coleman up in there just above Zach Galla by just those falls. So, I mean, and also it's interesting because so many of these athletes have similar capabilities in the lead discipline. So it's going to be exciting, but also I feel like my hands are going to be sweating the entire lead competition.
I'm stressed.
And I might need some extra oxygen.
Yeah, please, anybody. Just like that, we're on our last boulder. We have one athlete on the wall at a time now. Jesse Grouper is going to finish up his round on men's boulder 4, followed closely by Sean Bailey, and then it'll be over, and it's going to be sad.
I know. It all goes by so fast. Jesse Grouper definitely needs to get some points here, though, because he is a lead specialist and has had quite a record as it comes with lead. He's been national champion before. He's won lead World Cups. He should feel comfortable going into lead, but you do always want to come in ahead and not at a deficit. It's funny because earlier we were like, oh, most people will campus, but if anyone's going to do a heel hook here, it's going to be Jesse Grouper, and he does it with ease. Possibly a little more strenuous movement, but for him more comfortable to do, especially kind of eliminating as many dynamic movements as he can right now with that injury.
Yeah, and I think he's really good with his heels. He's really good with his feet and his toes, and I think that's how he injured his left knee. I think he was heel hooking and, and heard a pop, which is always
bad.
The last thing you want to hear, but he's done a really great job of rehabbing and recovering that injury, and it seems like it's not holding him back much, to be honest.
I agree. I feel like he's been looking better in this boulder round than I've seen him in other, I mean, just in this competition in general, because he looked great in the qualification, and then he's, still has more points than he needs to get, but he is doing well. He's getting through. He's topped a boulder, so he definitely could top this one, and that would set him up nicely to move into the lead round where, I mean, he could easily top the route. He's topped many a route in a lead semifinal and final, so we'll have to see.
A little water break.
Hydration is so key.
It is really, there's a lot of variability in the things that athletes will bring with them to the actual boulders. A lot of athletes don't bring, Jesse has like a full tote bag with him. A lot of athletes don't do that, bring their water, bring all their shoes. That bag is full. I would like to know what's in there, actually.
Oh my gosh, we should do a little segment. What's in your bag? Yeah. I think we should totally do that. That'd be interesting.
All right, well, stay tuned for that. But some athletes bring nothing. Some athletes bring whatever, the shoes they're wearing and the chocolate bag that's on them. Sean Bailey, I think, being one of them, actually.
Totally. And it also depends on the environment. I remember whenever the World Cup used to be in Vail, like that elevation was so intense, you needed water while you were out in the round, because if you didn't have it, you might throw up. Like, it was just so hot, the elevation was so intense, and you were trying so hard. So the environment dictates a little bit. But then there are people who just always bring everything because they want to be prepared. I mean, you can't go back into isolation during the round, so might as well be prepared. Jesse, going back to his original beta, did try the campus one time, realized that this was more efficient for him.
Jesse doing a really good job of being patient, trying to, I think that's the first person we've seen sort of take the low road here.
I was going to say, he did this last time, and the low road is interesting. I don't know if it's necessary, and I think it might be mildly more strenuous, but
once again, you can see him crimping the screw hole on that volume. That's where his right hand is right now. He's got his finger in one of those screw holes on the right side. Again, that's totally fair game. But it is brutal.
Being low like that makes it really difficult for him to set the toe in a comfortable position. And I'm assuming he is setting the toe and not even trying, well, that position requires the toe, but I also think he's probably trying to stay away from heel hooks as well, because like you were saying, Allison, he did injure himself by heel hooking, allegedly, so he's probably trying to minimize the amount of times he has to do that. Obviously, if a move calls for it, he might take the risk, but conserving his body is super important, because ideally his goal is to make that team so that he's competing in the World Cups, and those start in April, so it's really not that far away.
Yeah, he absolutely wants that injury to keep getting better and not make it worse here at this comp.
And I think that's the risk you take, right? I mean, that's why he was on the fence about coming to this comp in the first place. He wasn't sure if it was going to happen. Isn't going to make that happen on that boulder, so not really the amount of points that he probably wanted to get on that boulder. Still a pretty good round for Jesse. Again, he's a speed specialist, so you don't see him. Oh my gosh, why do I keep saying speed? He's a lead specialist, so he's got a little more cushion. You don't see him in the top 10 right now. Adam Shahar still standing strong, but Sean Bailey out here trying to get another top. We'll see what that does for him.
After you said that Jesse Gruber is a speed specialist, I would love to see Jesse Gruber's speed.
You know what I think it is? I think because for so long we only talked about speed specialists, right? As a specialist, and everybody else was just, they did boulder and lead, so we weren't really kind of talking about them in that way, and I think it's just this automatic speed specialist. Whoops. Oh, interesting. I wouldn't have expected him to try to go feet first. I thought he would just go straight into campus. We do know this way works. Not a lot of room for the heel. Also, those kind of heels are interesting when the holds are blocked because it also depends on how the width of your heel is. Can you wedge it in there? Also, is the heel on your shoe bulky? There's all these other factors. So just because one person can get their heel in doesn't mean that someone else can.
It is also, these athletes take the time when they come out onto the mats to get all the information they can about a given boulder. And one of the things that these athletes can look at is where the chalk is on the holds and also where shoe rubber is. So I do actually wonder if because Jesse Gruber was out right before Sean Bailey, you could see there was a little bit of shoe rubber on that 5-point zone. So Sean Bailey maybe thought that he was supposed to go foot first, or that other people had done it, just because those are those little hints, those little tricks that these athletes are looking for to try to give them some sort of indication of what the beta is. And sometimes you get a little tripped up if you're the one athlete that's after somebody who maybe did something a little different or a little bit creative.
That's so true, that it comes down to the running order, kind of. So as it stands, even with the top here, Sean Bailey cannot get into the #1 spot in the leaderboard going into lead, so Adam Shahar will stay there going into the lead discipline, but he can still gain more points to move up into the top 10, which would be a great place for him to be, as he is a lead special, or not a lead, he isn't, he's actually, well, no, I think he's a boulder and lead specialist. I think he is equally good at both of them. I think that consistency-wise, lead maybe more, but that's just playing more to the discipline of lead being a little more consistent rather than bouldering being full of a little more variables. But
absolutely, I think Sean is definitely very proficient in both boulder and lead is just easier to be.
It just is, yeah.
Yeah, easier to be consistent, easier to have similar scores in an entire season. But yeah, it would be really great for Sean to get the top on this boulder, at least that 10-point zone. Would make a big difference in his score. He just sort of boggled it a little bit, as we've seen a bunch of the other competitors do. It is blind, it is around that corner, and Sean is a little bit shorter, so he can't necessarily reach up like some of the other people have been able to. He does have to pounce a little bit, and that was great accuracy too from Sean Bailey. See what he does with his footwork here. Opting for that right foot high. See if he thinks better of it. Doesn't look like he does.
Oh, close. Interesting. I would have thought he would have crossed that foot through. Perhaps he will make that adjustment on the next try. It does seem like that adjustment will be necessary. I mean, we saw Zach Alla do that, and even when he caught the cross, because Zach's on a little more of the smaller side, you saw him kind of press into that 10 zone immediately. We haven't seen a lot of the taller men have to do that, so I think getting that left foot on is going to be really important in order for Sean to top this boulder. And again, he really wants to get those extra points moving into the lead round so he doesn't have to feel as stressed in the lead round, because right now he's kind of below all those people that are so close within scores, and if he can top this boulder, he'll be kind of in the game with all of them.
Especially like you said, there are some people who are better at lead, who are lead specialists, who had really good boulder rounds. So those are people that if you are a lead specialist and you had a bad bouldering round, you're going to be trying to catch those people. So Ellis Ernsberger is a really great example of that. He's sitting in 5th right now with a really great bouldering round. And so for Sean, getting this top is going to be super important. We'll see if just not quite seeing that step up foot through that Zach Gallen did so well.
And what you were just saying is so important. Like, Ellis Ernsberger has 64.4 points, and if Sean could have topped that boulder, it would have put him into the 60s, and Ellis is a lead specialist. So the fact that he did so well puts a lot of pressure on Sean for the lead route. So we'll take another look at those current standings. Adam Shahar holding strong with that high score of 78.7, the highest score in the boulder round. Simon Himmler and Hugo Hoyer right behind him. Nathaniel Coleman making it into that top 10, as is Zach Gallen, Ross Fulkerson. So a lot of familiar names, but it's going to be an intense round of the lead discipline. So we will be back in a little bit. You're going to have to go to that YouTube channel at USA Climbing, find the link for the lead discipline. It's going to be a very exciting round. A lot of things up in the air. So join us in a little bit, and it's going to be a great fight to see who's going to make it into that final tonight.
You have to fail multiple times to find the right way. But once you find that right flow, and you're gonna be more successful.
Resilience is kind of understanding that like bad things will happen and that like you can turn those into opportunities to grow and become a stronger person.
When I was young, I was one of the only women in climbing. I was the kid at the gym climbing with all the older dudes. I think for me, it was sort of like a proving ground.
I've had those struggles too, that people have been upset that there's been a black person in their gym. And I'm resilient because I don't let it stop me.
Adversity teaches you to fail properly. And if you're not willing to accept failure, then you're never gonna learn to grow.
Bro, whatever you could throw at me, like, you're not gonna take me away from what I wanna do. You can't stop me.
Whether you're alpine climbing or cragging after work, Gnarly Nutrition is here to help you push your possible.
Travel doesn't have to be this super exotic international thing. It can really be out of your own backyard. The high desert is so three-dimensional and it's so big that there is no way you could ever see everything here. The orange and brown and yellow, it's just so endless. Whether it's something I've done before or something brand new, there's so much to explore just right here.
So yeah, we've been testing out the new catch and hold system from the TruBlue IQ Plus. And with the IQ Plus, you know, you're just able to stop there, rest, shake out, try to figure out the moves, and yeah, really excited to have this new device in our gym. It's going to just really help us to continue growing the sport.
Since 1966, we have viewed walls not as obstacles, but as opportunities. From the big walls of Yosemite to the high peaks of the Himalaya, we were searching for a personal kind of freedom. In this pursuit, we found a community, strengthened by different stories, experiences, and perspectives. This community has shown us that the only way forward is together.